Chapter 174. First update. 3 more votes. Dark Mountain wants 3 more chapters. 23 more votes. Dark Mountain wants 4 more chapters. 43 more votes. 5 more chapters. Brothers and sisters, vote for me. Let Dark Mountain write with all his might. I want 5 more chapters. I beg for votes. Hiss. With a wave of his hand, Chun-Hao released a wisp of smoke from his hand and stood between him and Tantai Lien. It blocked Tantai Lien's beautiful and alluring naked body. Even so, the image in Chun-Hao's mind was still frozen at the moment he opened his eyes. Her jade-like skin, her full and round breasts, her 2 tender buds, her slender waist, her flat stomach, and the lush forest area. Tantai Lien's panicked and shy expression was also present. Bang, bang, bang. Tantai Lien felt as if her heart was about to jump out of her throat. The moment Chun-Hao opened his eyes and saw her, she also saw the completely naked Chun-Hao. However, in her panic, she did not see clearly. She only saw the white and smooth Chun-Hao and screamed to protect herself. At that moment, when she saw Chun-Hao release the fog attribute energy, she felt slightly more at ease. But what should she do if he saw her naked? How could she face him in the future? Even though she saw him, she was the one who was at a disadvantage. It was not the same. Tantai Lien was a little confused. Shaking his head fiercely, Chun-Hao instantly cut off the thoughts in his mind and said, "Don't think too much. I didn't see anything. When I stopped, the little bird interfered with my eyes. Hurry up and put on your clothes, or else you'll really see it later." Hearing Chun-Hao's words, Tantai Lien was so frightened that she quickly took out her clothes from her storage ring. After a series of rustling sounds, the two of them quickly put on their clothes. The smoke dispersed, and Tantai Lien's face was red. She did not even dare to look at Chun-Hao. Although Chun-Hao also felt a little strange, his expression was rather calm, as if nothing had happened. He sensed the boundless and vigorous energy in his body. "Second grade Grandmaster," Chun-Hao said with a little excitement. In just a few short hours, who was immersed in receiving the inheritance, did not feel anything at all. However, at this moment, he had actually directly soared from the 9th rank Martial Emperor level to the 2nd rank Martial Ancestor level. Chun-Hao couldn't help being surprised. It had to be known that his abnormal body, as well as the barrier to the fusion of intent and martial arts, caused the amount of energy he needed to advance to the 1st grade to be several times higher than others. This was the main factor that prevented him from advancing. The greatest difficulty for other cultivators, comprehending the mysteries of the barrier, was basically non-existent for him. He had already comprehended how to operate the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth. It could be said that before reaching the divine realm, there was no barrier to comprehension. The only thing he needed was energy. 6th grade E-Ancestor. I've advanced to 6th grade E-Ancestor. After a short while, Tantai Lien said with shock and joy. Chun-Hao frowned slightly. The little bit of excitement in his heart was immediately wiped out by Tantai Lien's 6th grade E-Ancestor level. They had both received the inheritance and cultivated together. However, he had only advanced by 2 grades, while Tantai Lien had advanced by 6 grades. What was there to be excited about? Rumble. At this moment, the palace door, which had already lost the restriction, opened with a rumble. Chun-Hao and Tantai Lien's strong senses immediately caught the aura of Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianping. Chun-Hao is here too? Li Yifeng suddenly said with a little surprise. Yang Fan and Ni Jianping also looked surprised. In their minds, Tantai Lien must have received the inheritance. As for Chun-Hao, he should have been sent out of the palace like them. Now, all the restrictions in the palace had disappeared. The pure yang energy was also gone. It was obvious that Tantai Lien had successfully received the inheritance. I just came in. Chun-Hao looked at the 3 of them. He could clearly feel that the 3 of them had made a breakthrough in their cultivation. Their bodies were emitting vigorous, pure yang energy. Not bad. It seems that your cultivation has improved greatly too. Ni Jianping was already a second-grade martial ancestor when he was in the Xuanwu Empire. When he came out of the Endless Sea, he had already advanced to 3rd grade. However, his current aura was obviously that of 4th grade. Li Yifeng and Yang Fan had also advanced to 3rd grade martial ancestor. Moreover, although the three of them did not receive the inheritance of the Phoenix, the vigorous pure yang aura on their bodies showed that they had comprehended the heavenly sun. Moreover, in this special space of the historical remains, the three of them had obtained a trace of the Phoenix's bloodline. Before reaching a certain level, they had the ability to store boundless pure yang energy. Haha, no matter how much I've improved, I can't compare to you. You should have reached the ancestor level, right? What about Xiaoyan? Li Yifeng asked with a trace of excitement. I didn't improve much. I just went from 9th grade emperor level to 2nd grade ancestor level. Chen Hao said with a smile on his face. Damn it. It would have been better if Li Yifeng had not asked. Since he had asked, Chen Hao, who had just been defeated by Tantai Lien, naturally had a fine balance. Cough cough, Tan. Xiaoyan received the inheritance of the historical remains and reached 6th grade ancestor level. That's quite impressive. Chen Hao did not care about the feelings of the three of them and said again. Tantai Lien was also immersed in the surprise of increasing her cultivation level. However, when Chen Hao did not admit that he had also received the inheritance, she frowned slightly but did not say anything. At this moment, when she heard that Chen Hao was going to call her by her name, but changed it to Xiaoyan, her frowning eyebrows relaxed a little. Even she did not notice the change in her expression. At the same time, Yang Fan and Ni Giant Pain also looked at Tantai Lien in shock. 6th grade ancestor level. Just by receiving an inheritance, she, who was originally the weakest, had become the strongest? However, when they thought about how they had only drunk a mouthful of soup and had advanced by 1 grade, and how their physical bodies had undergone shocking changes, they suddenly realized that it was reasonable for Tantai Lien, who had eaten meat, to advance by so much. On the contrary, Chen Hao, who had also drunk the soup, had advanced by 1 grade more than them. It was even more strange that he had advanced by 1 grade. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 24 figures streaked across the void like meteors and landed among the mountains. We've already gone around half a circle, but we still haven't sensed anything. If we still can't find them, we'd better start the training first. If they're running around randomly, it'll be like looking for a needle in a haystack. It'll take too much time. If we can obtain a supreme grade spirit weapon, what's there to be afraid of? There are countless ancient city remains here, and we have 6 months of training. There'll be plenty of opportunities. It doesn't matter if we delay for a day or two. These 24 people. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Just as everyone was arguing around Fan Yin, a buzzing sound suddenly came from between Fan Yin's eyebrows, causing everyone to shut their mouths. Nearby, Fan Yin's eyes suddenly flashed with an excited glow as he spoke in a deep voice. However, he immediately frowned and asked, Why are there only 3? 3? Whose? There's none from Chen Hao and Tantai Lien. Could they have cultivated separately? Let's capture them and ask them first. Fan Yin, quick, lead the way. Yu Wuqing said. Strange. Why can't I feel it? In the palace, Chen Hao and the other 4 did not leave immediately. Due to the sudden appearance of the legacy in the ruins, Chen Hao had yet to decipher the spiritual brand. Originally, Chen Hao wanted to first comprehend the spiritual brand in his body and then help Tantai Lien and the other 3 to decipher it. He would keep his own spiritual brand. It was better to let a fat sheep come to him than to find one himself. However, at this moment, his cultivation had clearly improved, but he could not capture the spiritual brand in his body. Just as Chen Hao was puzzled, the treasure-hunting sword spirit suddenly said in Chen Hao's mind, Someone's coming. After the pure yang energy disappeared, the treasure-hunting sword spirit also released its senses. At this moment, Chen Hao was comprehending, so it was naturally in charge of investigating. Yu Wuqing and the other 4. So fast, Chen Hao was slightly shocked. He opened his eyes immediately and looked at Tantai Lien and the other 3 who were sitting cross-legged beside him. You've comprehended it? Tantile Yin asked immediately. I can't sense any spiritual brand in my body. It seems that my cultivation is not enough. They're coming. You guys go first, Chen Hao said coldly. Chen Hao, before coming to the pure yang relics, our cultivation was not enough, and we would only be a burden to you. But now, I'm confident that I could take down a 5th or 6th grade martial grandmaster. I'll fight with you. Me too. Me too. Li Yifeng and Ni Giant Pain said in unison. At this moment, the three of them seemed to have regained the confidence they had in Xuanwu Empire. Yang Fan's ordinary face shone with a hint of determination. He restrained his aura to the extreme. Li Yifeng's handsome face shone with a hint of coldness. He looked at Chen Hao with a hint of indomitable will. On the other hand, Ni Giant Pain was as calm as a mountain. His eyes were sharp and burning. I'm already a 6th grade emperor intent. Tantile Yin's majestic and terrifying spiritual aura spread out. Her otherworldly little face seemed to have regained the appearance of when she had violently killed her opponents. Looking at the expressions of the 4 people, Chen Hao frowned slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he said, All right, they have more people. We can't fight them head-on. Follow me first. Boom. After saying that, Chen Hao flew into the sky, broke through the top floor of the palace, and flew into the void. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. At the same time, Tantile Yin and the other 3 quickly followed and flew into the depths of the relics. Trying to run? Wen Fanyin, who was still a few hundred miles away, sensed the tracking talisman moving quickly. He immediately frowned and said, Speed up. They're flying into the depths of the relics. Did they discover us? Impossible. Those 3 are only lower grade, martial grade ancestors. How could they discover us? They should be just leaving. Chase them. Hurry up. Whoosh. The 7th grade Emperor Intent Fanyin's speed suddenly increased again. Among the 24 people, other than Fanyin, there were 5 7th grade martial grade ancestors, including Yu Wuqing. One of the 7th grade martial grade ancestors had an arrogant expression. He flew in the air as if he was taking a stroll. He looked extremely relaxed. His figure flashed, and he arrived beside Fanyin. He said, Too slow. There are only 3 lower grade martial grade ancestors. Fanyin, I'll bring you over first. You can just follow behind. P.S. I wish all the brothers and sisters who support AO Tian a happy Chinese Valentine's Day. Begging for monthly votes. Begging for more. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 175. Today's monthly votes aren't good enough. Wushan was already forcing himself to be spirited, but when he saw the monthly votes, he became weak. What a fast speed. Chen Hao, who had advanced to 2nd stage martial great master, had a powerful soul, and his range of perception had increased by several times. When Fanyin was brought closer by the fast cultivator, Chen Hao frowned slightly. They've caught up? Li Yifeng asked. Yes. However, it's not a big team. There are only 2 people who are very fast. That's strange. They want to deal with me with just these 2 people? Could it be? Chen Hao frowned slightly. Then, his eyes lit up and he thought to himself, the spiritual brand on my body must have disappeared when I received the inheritance. The will of the inheritance that Phoenix and Phoenix left behind is the nirvana flame. When it refined Tantile Yin in my body, it should have burned away all the abnormalities. The spiritual brand on Tantile Yin's body must have disappeared as well. Otherwise, she would have been able to sense it since she's already a 6th stage martial great master, and her spiritual power is extremely strong. Interesting. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth suddenly curled into an evil smile as he flew at high speed. What's wrong? Tantile Yin was confused. You're a martial great master, and my spiritual power is also strong. Our spiritual brands should have been wiped away when we advanced. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for me not to sense it. They should be chasing after Yang Fan and the other 2. They didn't notice Xiao, Lin, and me. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to chase after us first. Isn't this interesting? Let's go, we'll speed up. It'll be easy once we enter any ancient city ruins. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, and Chunhao instantly turned into a gust of wind. At the same time, Tantai Lien and the other three suddenly realized that the air in front of them had lost its original resistance as they flew at high speed. Instantly, their speed soared again. Yang Fan, who had already comprehended half of the wind attribute, was like a fish in water. In addition, the five of them now contained a vast amount of pure yang energy in their bodies, causing their speed to far surpass their cultivation base. Although they were only a few hundred miles apart, if they wanted to catch up, it would definitely not be done in a short period of time. So fast. Fan Yin frowned slightly. Of course, I was only half a step away from comprehending the true essence of the space attribute. Other than Lung Yihan, no one below 9th grade martial grandmaster is faster than me. Hearing Fan Yin's words, the young man immediately said with a trace of pride. His eyes could not help but glance at Fan Yin's chest. Through the collar, the towering snow-white cleavage was clearly visible, causing the young man to swallow his saliva uncontrollably. Especially at this moment, he was still holding Fan Yin's soft little hand. What I'm saying is they're so fast. What? Are they fast? Fan Yin's words made the proud young man frown. He suddenly summoned his energy and accelerated again. Bang! Rumble! From afar, the sound of a huge energy explosion reached the ears of Chun Hao and the others. As they quickly approached, a huge city that stretched as far as the eye could see appeared in front of Chun Hao's group. Just by looking at the scale of this city, it was obviously larger than the pure Sun Ancient City. At this moment, the first restriction gate of the city had been blasted open. Many cultivators were destroying the restriction inside. It's here. Get down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Chun Hao's group immediately landed in the city as fast as lightning. They've stopped flying. They should have entered the ancient city ruins. I told you, they shouldn't have discovered us. Fan Yin said with a smile when she sensed that the tracking seal had slowed down abruptly and was not moving forward at all. Indeed, after flying for a few hundred miles, a huge ancient city appeared in front of them. It's in this palace, Fan Yin said as she pointed to a palace below them. Let me do it. You just wait outside. The young man smiled and said. Fanny nodded. With the young man's cultivation, it would not be a problem for him to capture 3 lower-grade martial grandmasters alive. He could do it in minutes. However, 5 minutes had passed, and the young man still had not come out. In the palace, she could sense that the 3 tracking talismans were just moving around casually. This made Fanny frown slightly. Her valiant spiritual tentacles immediately spread out and merged into the palace. At this moment, even without the tracking talisman, she could sense the aura of Yang Fan and the other 2. However, what surprised her was that she could not capture the young man's aura. What's going on? Fan Yin was shocked. Could it be that he's still hiding his aura to deal with 3 lower-grade martial grandmasters? No. He's only powerful because he has comprehended the essence of the space attribute. Even if he's hiding his aura, I should still be able to sense it. Hiss! At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from the entrance of the palace. In an instant, something that looked like a watermelon flew quickly toward Fan Yin. You're courting death. Fan Yin shouted, and a majestic spiritual power shone from between her eyebrows. However, when she saw clearly what was flying toward her, her eyes widened in shock, and she almost screamed. A head. The young man's head. What made Fan Yin's hair stand on end was that the young man's expression had a trace of arrogance and haughtiness. It was obvious that when he died, he did not know that he was in danger. He was a 7th-grade martial grandmaster and was the fastest and most powerful among them. However, he had killed them silently. At this moment, Fan Yin suddenly screamed in horror. Her violent spiritual power suddenly surged out of her body and condensed into rays of sword light that attacked her surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. 30 feet behind Fan Yin, the rays of terrifying spiritual power sword light made a huge explosion sound. Fan Yin did not even turn her head. With a swoosh, she instantly moved 100 feet away. Her whole body was covered in cold sweat, and her spiritual power tendrils protected her body as she looked in the direction of the explosion. Her intuition, which was on the verge of death, saved her life. An extraordinarily handsome figure appeared in front of her eyes. You? How is that possible? If I were you, when I escape with my life, the first thing I would do would be to run away and not be surprised. The perception of a 7th grade martial grandmaster is indeed not bad. Xiaoyan, why don't I let you try? Chen Hao smiled and stood in the air as he spoke. Okay. Following Tantai Lian's voice, her beautiful figure also strangely appeared beside Chen Hao. At the same time, a pure, vigorous, and boundless spiritual power suddenly spread out. With a hiss, Tantai Lian actually charged towards Fan Yin violently. Tantai Lian, who was a 6th grade martial grandmaster and had the inheritance of Phoenix, was able to hide her spiritual power from Fan Yin's perception under the cover of Chen Hao. This was enough to show that she had the ability to fight against Fan Yin. Chen Hao did not need to participate in a battle that did not pose any threat. It was better to let Tantai Lian train. Chen Hao, who was a 2nd grade martial grandmaster, currently had an unimaginably strong fusion of energy. Chen Hao had absolute confidence that he could fight against a 9th grade martial grandmaster. That 7th grade martial grandmaster youth, under his sneak attack, was no different from killing a chicken. How is that possible? How is that possible? You want to kill me? Dream on, Fan Yin said in fear. He frantically took out an almost transparent spiritual artifact short sword. Instantly, his body became streaks of sword light. At the same time, he quickly retreated. He was obviously scared out of his wits and did not dare to continue fighting. He only wanted to block Tantai Lian's attack and take the opportunity to escape. However, Chen Hao was like a ghost and instantly blocked his escape route. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianpain, the 3 targets, also walked out of the palace. However, they did not approach and instead watched the show from afar. Their strength was not enough to fight against a 7th grade martial grandmaster. One did not dare to continue fighting. One was filled with fighting spirit and confidence, and one could appear at any time to block the way. Tantai Lian, who was only a 6th grade martial grandmaster, actually managed to suppress her opponent in a short half a minute. No matter if it was in terms of adaptability or spiritual power, she surpassed the 7th grade martial grandmaster Fan Yin. Moreover, Tantai Lian's spiritual power contained a majestic and terrifying pure yang energy. At first, Tantai Lian was not familiar with the use of this energy. However, after a few short exchanges, she was like a fish in water, and her power became more and more violent. She actually gave up the advantage of a martial grandmaster's long-range attack and kept approaching Fan Yin. She merged her spiritual power and pure yang energy into her sword and fought in close combat. Boom! Boom! Terrifying spiritual power destroyed a large part of the palace that had lost its restrictions as the two of them fought. The huge commotion attracted the attention of a few people who were training in the city. Among them, a few experts came to watch the show. As for those with low cultivation, they did not dare to come over and continued to break through the restrictions. Don't kill me. My brother is an inner disciple of the sword faction, Fan Fong. If you kill me, you will die a horrible death. Fan Yin saw that there was no hope of escaping and that the main group would not be able to arrive in a short period of time. As he defended against Tantai Lian's attacks, he said loudly, "My soul brand has the seal of life and death that my brother condensed. Even if you kill Yu Wuqing and the rest, you can forget about hiding it from my brother." Sword faction, Chen Hao said with a slight frown. That's right, a rank 6 sect, the sword faction. The corners of Chen Hao's mouth curled up slightly, and he spoke with a trace of arrogance. What a high-level sect. Unfortunately, I'm not afraid of threats. However, you are senior brother Fan Fong's younger sister, Fan Yin? Right at this moment, one of the spectating experts suddenly asked. As he spoke, his body flashed, and he rushed toward Tantai Lian and Fan Yin. He shouted, "Stop!" With a casual wave of his hand, A terrifying river of yuan power surged between Tantai Lien and Fan Yin with a boom, directly forcing the two of them to retreat. Whoosh! Chunhao instantly flew to Tantai Lien's side and stood in front of Tantai Lien. His expression was cold as he stared at the expert who had interfered with the fight. Even he did not expect such a sudden, unforeseen event. Furthermore, that casual attack earlier was extremely powerful. It was obvious that he was a rank 8 or even rank 9 martial emperor. More importantly, Chun Hao could clearly sense that the man's body contained the aura of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth. As if she had found her savior, Fan Yin moved to the side of the expert with lightning speed and asked, "Senior brother, do you know my brother? Who doesn't know senior brother Fan Fong? Before we disciples of the sword faction came here to train, senior brother Fan Fong had specially instructed us to take care of you. Don't worry, with senior brother here, no one will be able to harm you." That expert looked at Fan Yin's voluptuous figure and said arrogantly. After he finished speaking, he looked at Chun Hao and Tantai Lien and said, "If you don't want to die, Scram, if it wasn't for the sex restrictions, I wouldn't mind killing you two for the sake of my younger sister Fan Yin." Second update, seeking monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 176. First update. Begging for monthly votes. More than 30 monthly votes yesterday, less than 40, but Wushan will explode in the 4th update. Can today's monthly votes be more intense? Please everyone, 20 monthly votes plus 1 chapter. Wushan wants 5, 6, 7 chapters. Come on, brothers and sisters. Cast your votes and let Wushan explode. What? You don't agree? Seeing Chun Hao's cold eyes, the sect disciple standing with his hands behind his back narrowed his eyes and said disdainfully. Tantai Lien gently pulled Chun Hao's arm behind Chun Hao. "Senior, don't let them go. He has a 5 elements combination spiritual weapon." Fan Yin could feel the strength of the young man beside her. She, who had just begged for mercy, was now looking at Chun Hao fiercely and sending a message to the sect disciple beside her. What? A 5 elements combination spiritual weapon? The sect disciple was slightly surprised. He looked at Chun Hao with eyes full of greed. Then the aura around him surged crazily. At the same time, he said indifferently, "Hand it over and scram. Otherwise, don't blame me for being too strong and merciless." Chun Hao's expression did not change. He waved Tantai Lien away and stared at the sect master in front of him. He said, 8th grade martial grandmaster or 9th grade martial grandmaster. Let's talk nicely. Maybe I'll let it go for the sake of the Flying Sword sect. Unfortunately, you're full of nonsense and greedy. Very good. I like to see how strong you are. You do have some ability, but you're only a lower grade martial grandmaster. You don't know how high the sky is. I'm too strong, so I'll fulfill your wish. In your next life, remember to take a step back, and you'll be able to see the sky. When Tai Zigong heard Chun Hao's words, he smiled. His expression was calm. He waved his hand and sent Fan Yin away. Layers of terrifying vortexes rippled from his back. In the blink of an eye, 2 brilliant energy wings appeared on his shoulders. Space-ripping wings? Powerful. The Sky Splitter wings was the strongest movement technique in the postnatal realm of the Sword Control sect, and only disciples that had comprehended the circulation of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth were able to cultivate it. By relying on these 2 types of auras, one was able to produce a trace of energy that could link up with space, and its speed was shocking to the extreme. It's on par with our Startling Cloud Pavilion's Startling Swan technique. A disciple of the Startling Cloud Pavilion, a 6th grade sect, said to the person beside him, "That's right. That disciple on the 100 Empire ranking is truly a newborn calf. No matter how talented he is, Tai Zigong is only a rank 8 martial ancestor. Now that he has mastered the space-ripping wings, even if the 2 of us join forces, I'm afraid we won't be a match for him. Moreover, Tai Zigong is a disciple of the rank 6 sect, the sword riding school. That brat is truly seeking his own death. Something's not right. Don't forget that when we came out to train, the sect told us not to clash with the disciples on the 100 Empire ranking as much as possible. After all, they might join our sect. But this Tai Zigong was clearly going to let them go, yet he wanted them to hand over something, and now he's directly using the void-shattering wings. Clearly, this thing made Tai Zigong a little excited. Could it be some precious treasure? Rings of energy of the 5 elements circulated and emitted a misty, 7-colored radiance. Before he even made his move, his entire aura was already extremely valiant. A terrifying pressure enveloped an area of several hundred meters. Tantai Lien and the other 3, as well as many spectating experts, all retreated one after another. Tai Zigong's valiant aura caused Fan Yin's face to be filled with a hint of ruthlessness and excitement. Even she had never imagined that she would be so lucky to encounter a disciple of the sword riding school when she was on the verge of death. Now, she was almost certain that not only would she be able to kill Chun Hao and the others, she would also be able to obtain a portion of the top-grade combination spirit artifact. Given Tai Zigong's respectful tone toward her brother, he definitely wouldn't take it all for himself. Then, he wouldn't have to share it with Yu Wuqing and the others. Just as the aura on Tai Zigong's body surged towards Chun Hao like a mountain flood, Chun Hao's expression was solemn. Waves of incomparably fierce battle intent exploded from his body. Without waiting for Tai Zigong to make his move, he abruptly took a step forward. Clang! 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 Dazzling 5-colored sword light, like lightning in the clear sky, whizzed out. It contained boundless energy of the 5 elements and pure yang. With a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and the earth, it took the lead to attack Tai Zigong. Hiss! 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 Along with the terrifying 5 elemental sword light, smaller sword rays filled the surroundings of the 5 elemental sword light. Like small snakes, they covered the sky and covered the earth. The moment Chun Hao made his move, he took out the 5 elemental spiritual sword. The valiant strength of a 9th-grade martial ancestor caused Chun Hao to feel immense pressure. At the same time, he was also completely excited. He wanted to have a head-on battle to see the extent of his strength. Not to mention that Tai Zigong was an 8th-grade martial ancestor. Even if it was a 9th-grade martial ancestor, Chun Hao would still do the same. You have some skills, but the difference is still too great. Oomph! Tai Zigong snorted disdainfully. The wings on his shoulders suddenly flapped violently. Whoosh, an incomparably fierce wind suddenly rose. The void seemed to be torn apart by the wind. In the ear-piercing sound, the space around Tai Zigong strangely flashed with strange fluctuations. It was like the distortion of space when the transmission formation appeared. It actually easily dissolved Chun Hao's powerful attack into nothingness. Whoosh! Under the wings that contained the energy of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth, Tai Zigong's body rotated at a high speed. The moment he broke Chun Hao's attack, his wings suddenly flapped and a sword appeared in his hand. With a hiss, it seemed to tear apart the void. With a terrifying speed, he attacked Chun Hao. Chun Hao's face changed color in horror. Tai Zigong's fighting talent was far beyond Chun Hao's imagination. Not only did he operate the 5 elements and comprehend the yin and yang of heaven and earth, but he also relied on the energy of these 2 realms to have a trace of the ability that only the martial god could have. Although it was only a little bit of aura, it was like condensing a black hole and easily dissolved all of Chun Hao's attacks. Hiss! A strand of peerlessly swift and fierce sword chi approached within 30 meters of Chun Hao in the blink of an eye. Boom! Ding! Ding! First, there was the terrifying sound of energy colliding. Then, Chun Hao and Tai Zigong's figures actually advanced instead of retreating. Under the raging energy that filled the sky, they directly engaged in close combat. The crisp and ear-piercing sound of metal clashing, accompanied by the sword light that filled the sky, caused everything around the 2 of them to suddenly explode with a rumble. At this moment, the 5 elements spiritual swords had been combined into one. They were held in Chun Hao's hand, shining with bright light. In just a moment, they had exchanged many blows. Chun Hao's figure twisted and turned, high and low. He had been fighting with Tai Zigong in close combat, flying up and down. Sometimes he was above the palace, and sometimes he was flying in the air. This caused the onlookers to open their eyes wide. It should be known that in this battle, except for Tantai, Lien, and the other three, everyone thought that the outcome would be determined in one move. However, at this moment, Chun Hao, who was only a lower-grade martial grandmaster, was completely suppressed by Tai Zigong's violent, sharp, and terrifying attacks. However, he was not blown away or defeated by Tai Zigong's powerful energy. Instead, he advanced step by step and did not panic at all. Tai Zigong was also shocked. The others were only watching from afar. As he was in the battle, he felt it more deeply. Obviously, he had the absolute advantage in terms of power and had the ability to defeat his opponent in one move. However, his opponent had used the mystery of power to the extreme, causing his energy to feel as if it was attacking cotton. He had a feeling that he could not do his best. It seemed that he had the upper hand, but he felt that he was completely restrained by his opponent. Especially after a few moves, his opponent seemed to have predicted the landing point of his attack. Swoosh! Swoosh! Just as Chun Hao and Tai Zigong were fighting, more than 20 figures flew over from afar. They had a look of surprise on their faces and landed beside Fan Yin. Fan Yin, what's going on? Where's Mo Yuj? Yu Wuqing stared in shock at Chun Hao, who was fighting with an expert in the void, and asked. The other youths also had a look of intense shock on their faces. At this moment, even a pig could see how powerful Chun Hao was. Hearing Yu Wuqing's words, everyone looked at Fan Yin, whose hair was messy but whose expression was complicated. At this moment, Fan Yin's expression was both shocked and gloating. Mo Yuj has been killed by Chun Hao. If it weren't for senior brother Tai Zigong, I would have died in Chun Hao's hands. Senior brother Tai Zigong is my brother's junior brother, a disciple of the 6th grade sword clan. Yu Wuqing, you almost got all of us killed. Oomph. I've already told senior brother Tai Zigong about the supreme grade spirit weapon. You should know what to do. This. Yu Wuqing's expression changed. What are you waiting for? Kill that bitch Tantai Lien and the other three. Fan Yin looked at Tantai Lien in the distance with resentment and said to Yu Wuqing and the rest. It was one thing for Tantai Lien to be prettier than her, but a 6th AG zone was actually more powerful than her and had almost killed her. This was something she could not tolerate. All right, seeing the current situation, these disciples knew that there was no way out. Indeed, if Tai Zigong had not appeared, they would not have been able to kill Chun Hao with the strength that he had displayed. On the contrary, they would have been killed by Chun Hao one by one. Swoosh! 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 Yu Wuqing took the lead, bypassing Chun Hao and Tai Zigong's battle range, and rushed toward Tantai Lien and the other three in the distance. The expressions of Tantai Lien and the other three changed drastically when the 20 over disciples appeared. The 4 of them looked at each other, and their expressions were extremely grave. Without Chun Hao, how could the 4 of them withstand so many experts from the other side? Escape? Chun Hao was still fighting, and the outcome was unknown. Fight? How long could they last? However, it seemed that they could only fight. Hiss! Yang Fan's ordinary face immediately withdrew all his aura. In an instant, it was as if he had turned into a breeze. At the same time, he transmitted his voice to Tantai Lien and the other 2, saying, I'll launch a sneak attack. Hold on, as long as Chun Hao can win, we still have a chance to live. Tantai Lien, if you can escape, then escape. Your strength is no weaker than any of them. Tantai Lien frowned slightly, but she shook her head. A majestic and terrifying mental energy spread out at this moment. In an instant, a scorching hot energy bloomed from between her eyebrows with a boom. Although Chun Hao's mind was completely immersed in the battle, it was impossible for him not to notice the arrival of more than 20 people. The expression on his face became even more solemn. However, at this moment, he was unable to free himself. The 8th grade martial grandmaster Tai Zigong's talent and battle strength were absolutely terrifying. It was impossible for him to distract Chun Hao. Otherwise, he would be defeated by the opponent's absolute strength in one move. Originally, Chun Hao was not in a hurry. Such a stressful battle was undoubtedly the best training for him. However, at this moment, boom, when a bright red light shone from Tantai Lian's forehead and her entire body seemed to be enveloped in flames, Chun Hao's forehead also exploded, requesting monthly votes, recommendation votes. Many thanks, Luo Shi's true love, Deng Ting, brothers Piao Hong has been promoted to the second alliance of AOTON. Thank you. There are 3 more updates today. Brothers with monthly votes, please vote for Wushan. Force Wushan to go all out. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 177. Second update. Begging for votes. Begging for an explosion. Boom. Chun Hao, who was in close combat with Tai Zigong, suddenly burst into raging flames. With a swing of his sword, a roaring fire dragon was formed, forcing the powerful Tai Zigong to retreat 100 jong. Tai Zigong resisted the surging energy in his body, his eyes filled with extreme shock. Whoosh! Chun Hao did not chase after Tai Zigong. Instead, he rushed to Tantai Lian's side at a terrifying speed. Jie Ga! 2 strange cries suddenly burst out from Chun Hao and Tantai Lian's bodies. At the same time, the 2 figures disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Rumble. The majestic flames immediately condensed into a flying bird that was dozens of zhong long, completely formed by flames. A destructive aura instantly enveloped a radius of a few hundred zhong. All of you die. Chun Hao's cold voice suddenly sounded like the king of hell. The giant bird suddenly opened its mouth and shot out terrifying fire arrows. In an instant, there were dozens of them, whistling as they rushed toward the 20 disciples who were besieging Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianping. Due to the sudden change of events, the 20 disciples did not even have time to react before they were engulfed by the flames. Following a series of explosions, cries of agony could be heard. It was unknown how many disciples were devoured by the terrifying flames in just a single move. Several 7th grade martial grandmaster experts were scared out of their wits. They used all their strength and frantically scattered in all directions. However, at this moment, from the giant bird's mouth that Chun Hao and Tantai Lian had condensed, more terrifying fire dragons suddenly shot out. Each fire dragon contained an extremely sharp sword light. Under the control of the 2 people's combined energy, they became scythes that reaped lives. 4 7th grade martial grandmasters, including Yu Wuqing, were turned into dust amidst their terrified screams. Phoenix Inheritance. Let's go. The shocked Tai Zigong suddenly waved his hand and grabbed the dumbfounded Fan Yin. The wings on his back flapped hundreds of times in an instant. With a whoosh, they fled into the distance like lightning. Try to run? Chun Hao let out a roar. Like a flaming phoenix, he flapped his huge wings, which were hundreds of feet long. With a hiss, he chased after Tai Zigong and Fan Yin at an even more terrifying speed. Tai Zigong felt the terrifying hot aura behind him getting closer and closer, and the expression on his face became extremely shocked. He frowned and finally threw Fan Yin behind him. At the same time, he quickly took out a crystal-clear pill that emitted a majestic power and stuffed it into his mouth. Ah! Senior brother, Fan Yin screamed in terror, her beautiful face becoming incomparably pale. She frantically waved her claws, wanting to grab Tai Zigong, but at this moment it was futile. Tai Zigong had clearly abandoned her and left. Husband and wife were birds of the same fate. When disaster struck, they would fly separately. Moreover, Tai Zigong had nothing to do with her. In a life-and-death situation, he could even protect himself. Why would he care about her? Frightened, Fan Yin activated all her mental strength, but it was still futile. The endless sea of fire instantly drowned her. She only heard Chun Hao's cold words, "Serves you right." Her head shook, and she lost consciousness. Swoosh. After a brief obstruction, Tai Zigong, who swallowed the pill and abandoned the package, suddenly seemed to tear the space apart. In a flash, he was thousands of feet away. Chun Hao and Tantai Lian, who were together, could not catch up even if they wanted to. The power of the Phoenix's nirvana was a power that completely exceeded their realm. The time that it could last was very short. Therefore, even though Chun Hao knew that Tai Zigong's escape was a great hidden danger, there was nothing he could do. In the world of cultivation, among the endless mountains, a figure sat cross-legged on the top of a mountain, surrounded by clouds and mist. He, who was immersed in cultivation, suddenly heard an explosion in his mind, causing him to open his eyes in horror. Little Een? Something happened to Little Een? Who is it? Who is it? The figure's face instantly twisted. In an instant, a white jade token flashed from between his eyebrows and floated in front of him. This white token was the seal of life and death that Fanine had mentioned. At the same time, the figure pinched a sword gesture. With a swoosh, a vigorous energy was poured into the jade token. Immediately, the jade token emitted rays of milky white light, and a mirror image condensed into a burning flame. A vague picture appeared in the flame. It was Chun Hao, Tantai Lian, and Fanine, who was struggling in fear. Then, Chun Hao smashed Fanine's head with a punch. "Sister." The figure's expression was crazily twisted. He closed his eyes tightly and trembled violently. He clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. "I want you to die. I want you to die." "Sister." The roar was like rolling thunder, dispersing the auspicious clouds around him. Fan Fong. Yes, this figure was Fanine's brother, Fan Fong. Fanine was his most beloved sister, who was only 2 years older than him. He, Fan Fong, and his sister Fanine were all top geniuses. 2 years ago, he entered the 100 Empire ranking and obtained the proud 35th place, entering the 6th-ranked sect, the sword-controlling sect. This was not what he was most proud of. What he was most proud of was that his cultivation talent was truly displayed after he entered the sword-controlling sect. In just 2 years, he broke through the martial sage and martial god realms from the 7th grade martial grandmaster realm and entered the legendary golden elixir realm. He broke the record of the sword-controlling sect's 100 Empire ranking disciples and became an inner disciple in the shortest time. He also became the focus of the sword-controlling sect. His fame in the sword-controlling sect was not inferior to that of the core disciples. However, Fanine was different from him. She was an intentional person. Although they were brother and sister, they were not related by blood. In addition, they were about the same age and had been childhood sweethearts. Although they did not cross the line, their relationship had long surpassed that of brother and sister. He had long been prepared. He had made an agreement with the outer sect elder in charge of selecting disciples on the 100 Empire ranking that no matter what his sister did, she would be accepted into the sword-controlling sect. When Fanine arrived, the brother and sister would be reunited. More importantly, when Fanine truly matured, she would become his Tao companion. One for martial arts, one for intent. She would be the most perfect Tao companion. Moreover, she would be his most trusted Tao companion. She would be someone who could truly go through life and death with him. But now everything was ruined. It was ruined by the hands of that youth. Hatred, overflowing hatred, almost caused him to fall into madness and lose his Tao heart. Among the spectating experts, a disciple of the startling cloud pavilion stared at Chun Hao and Tantai Lian's figures that were slowly descending. Their bodies were still flickering with the radiance of flames as he muttered with an astonished expression, "The Phoenix's inheritance. The legend is actually true." "What legend?" another disciple asked. 10,000 years ago, the godly martial empire was an existence that could contend against the powerful sects of the cultivation world. Do you know the main reason? It was the inheritance of the divine beasts. Azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, black tortoise, qilin, phoenix. Among them, there were 2 people who possessed the Phoenix's inheritance, a man and a woman. There were a total of 7 people, and these 7 people jointly controlled the godly martial empire. If they hadn't shed all pretenses of cordiality and started killing each other for the sake of the throne, the godly martial empire wouldn't have declined. That disciple slowly said, "Legend has it that the 7 of them fought in a chaotic battle. Among them, the phoenix and the phoenix were one body, while the other 5 were one body and didn't give way to each other. In the end, all of them died, causing the godly martial empire to decline. However, their inheritances were all left behind in the godly martial empire. This kind of divine beast inheritance has its own consciousness and ability. After the 7 of them died in battle, they sealed the godly martial empire together and turned it into a ruin. They also returned to their original state, waiting for the person who is qualified to obtain the inheritance to appear." No way? You mean that in this godly martial ruins, there's the phoenix's inheritance and the inheritance of the 5 divine beasts? That's right. It was originally just a legend, and even our cultivation world couldn't verify it. Ever since this godly martial ruins was discovered, batches of disciples came to train. Many of them were able to obtain the inheritance of the ruins, but none of them were able to obtain the inheritance of the divine beasts. Therefore, very few people mentioned it. I only found out about it when I heard my ancestor casually mention it before I started training. All right, let's go. The phoenix's inheritance has already appeared. Perhaps there are other divine beasts' inheritances in the area where the godly martial ruins opened this time. After all, they all died in the great battle back then, so it's very likely that they're all in this area. We have to hurry up. If we can obtain the inheritance, there won't be a problem for us to be promoted to inner court disciples. Even becoming a core disciple is only a matter of time. Let's go. Whoosh whoosh. After the 2 of them finished speaking, they turned into streams of light and flew towards the depths of the ruins with excited and hopeful expressions. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jianping looked at Chun Hao and Tantai Lien, who had returned to their side together, in shock. Tantai Lien blushed. Chun Hao, on the other hand, looked calm as he said, "I only obtained a part of the inheritance. I didn't expect that after joining forces with little Lien, the power would be so great. Unfortunately, the duration is too short. Otherwise, even Tai Zigong would have been left behind. Why are you standing there like idiots?" After the battle, the first thing to do is to collect the spoils of war. Collect the spoils of war? The 3 of them were stunned. Chun Hao smiled and waved his hand in the air. Immediately, the storage rings and intact spirit swords scattered on the ground flew into his hands. He said, "The spoils should be good." They went for wool and came home shorn. Let's go. Let's get out of here first. There's basically no threat now. The ruins here obviously have endless benefits for cultivation. Our cultivation is still too weak, so the key is to raise our realm. Let's go. Awoo, awoo. Just as Chun Hao finished speaking, the roars of demonic beasts suddenly came from outside the ancient city. The billowing aura of demonic beasts instantly violently filled the space between heaven and earth. The sky darkened. A tide of demonic beasts that lurked in the day and came out at night appeared out of thin air. Why are there so many? Li Yifeng was surprised. Chun Hao and the others also frowned slightly. After they entered the ruins, although they sensed the aura of demonic beasts, they had never encountered them. They thought that there was an error in the information transmitted by the token, or there was a problem with the range they entered. But at this moment, the billowing aura of demonic beasts clearly told them that danger was coming. Chun Hao, quickly break the restriction and enter the palace. Everything will be fine. The more palaces you destroy, the more demonic beasts there will be. Last time in the Pure Yang Palace, because you didn't destroy a restriction, no demonic beasts appeared. At this moment, Phoenix's weak and tender voice sounded in Chun Hao's mind. Seeking monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Thank you. I will update 4 chapters today. Today's monthly votes are only 11. Brothers and sisters, do you want Wushan to rest and only update 2 chapters tomorrow? Vote for me if you have monthly votes. Please. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 178. Third update. Begging for monthly votes. Wushan continues to write the fourth update. Forcefully writing with low efficiency. Brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes, please vote for Wushan. I need it. I really need it. I only have 18 votes now, and I've been left far behind by the third place. I've already voted 4 or 5 times. No matter how passionate I am, it's all gone. Kill our way out. Hearing Little Bird's voice, Chunhao suddenly understood what was going on. He frowned slightly for a moment, but he did not listen to Little Bird's suggestion. Instead, he said coldly to Tantai Lien and the others. The weak Tantai Lien looked at Chunhao in surprise. Obviously, she had also heard the news from Phoenix. However, Chunhao is obviously very good at breaking formations. Why didn't he do that? Without waiting for Tantai Lien to ask, Chunhao took the lead and flew into the air. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Giant Pain also took a deep breath and followed. Seeing this, Tantai Lien had no choice but to muster up her remaining mental strength and follow him. She really did not understand how Chunhao, who had also gone through a big battle, could still be so lively. In the face of countless flying monstrous beasts, Chunhao and the others approached the core of the ancient ruins while crazily killing monstrous beasts. Most of these monstrous beasts had the strength of a rank 6 to rank 7 martial grandmaster. Occasionally, a rank 8 or even a rank 9 martial grandmaster would appear. Chunhao was able to meet the strong ones immediately. When the 4 of them were in real danger, he was able to save them in time. However, under normal circumstances, even if they were seriously injured, Chunhao would not care. The cruel training had finally officially begun for Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the others. 6 months passed in a flash. Originally, they thought that Tai Zigong, who had escaped, would rope in the disciples of the sect and cause trouble. However, for 6 months, they did not meet him again. Other than entering the ancient ruins to cultivate, the 5 of them were crazily killing monstrous beasts. Everyone's strength had increased tremendously. Yang Fan and Li Yifeng both caught up to Ni Giant Pain. The 3 of them had all increased their cultivation to rank 6 martial ancestor realm. Especially Yang Fan, who had finally comprehended the true essence of the wind attribute in the cruel battle. His sword was extremely terrifying. As for Tantai Lien, in this unimaginably cruel training in battle, in addition to the inheritance of the Phoenix, she had risen from the 6th grade of Izong to the 8th grade of Izong. Her battle prowess was far above Yang Fan and the other 2. Even against the top experts on the imperial rankings, he could stand up to them. But compared to Chunhao, the 4 of them had the urge to find a piece of tofu and kill themselves. 9th grade Grandmaster. Yes, he was a 9th grade Grandmaster. Even Chunhao didn't expect the 5 of them to improve at such a speed. He especially didn't expect himself to be so fast. This was related to the fact that he had broken the forbidden formation and completely obtained the inheritance of the ruins. Coupled with the crazy hunting of demonic beasts and battles, the speed at which Tantai Lien and the others improved far surpassed that of the other disciples. However, the main reason why Chunhao could advance so quickly was because of the energy in his body. It had completely turned into a liquid state. What did this mean? It meant that for the same size of Dantian, after storing liquid energy, the energy would be hundreds or thousands of times more powerful. He didn't have any realm barriers. With sufficient energy, his breakthrough was like a hot knife through butter. It took him less than 6 months to advance from the 2nd grade to the 9th grade of Zone. On average, he broke through more than 1 grade per month. When the energy in his Dantian was completely refined into a liquid state, he finally broke through to the 9th grade of Zone. 6 months of experience had finally come to an end. Unfortunately, although they had been reminded by the Phoenix, the 5 of them still didn't find the so-called inheritance of the 5 divine beasts. Amidst the pillars of light that shot up into the sky, the cultivators scattered all over the relic disappeared one after another. When Chun Hao and the other four walked out of the huge transmission formation at the same time, except for Chun Hao, the faces of Tantai Lien and the other three were filled with excitement. 6 months had been too cruel for them. No matter what, they had never imagined that training with Chun Hao would allow them to reach such a terrifying level. Of course, they had never imagined that they would be able to improve to such an extent. At this moment, the relaxed feeling was very fulfilling. They had worked hard and risked their lives. Now, they had obtained the results they deserved. Chun Hao's expression was calm. His handsome face was even more mature. He didn't deliberately restrain his aura, nor did he deliberately release it. However, at this moment, anyone who saw him for the first time could feel an incomparably powerful aura. Every move, even a look, seemed to contain the power to topple mountains and overturn seas. Oh, we're finally out. I'm really looking forward to the real 100 Empire ranking competition. Figures, alone and in groups, rushed out of the transmission formation one after another. Their expressions were filled with excitement. Obviously, including the experience in the endless sea, a full 9 months of hard work had brought about astonishing improvements. However, after everyone walked out of the transmission formation and sighed, they looked at the huge martial arts practice field outside the transmission formation's exit. Directly above the rostrum of the martial arts practice field, there was a huge black pagoda monument standing tall. At this moment, the black pagoda monument was shining with a bright golden light. The names of all the cultivators were constantly flashing on it. Some were rising, some were falling, and some were not moving at all. Obviously, the mysterious black pagoda monument was still doing the final statistics of the combat strength rankings. At the front of the black pagoda monument, there were hundreds of powerful auras. They were obviously experts from the sects, and they were also staring at the black pagoda monument with bright eyes. Dongfang Ting and Xian Xian were also among them. Thousands of disciples who were on experience immediately rushed to the martial arts practice field. They were so excited that even their bodies were trembling. Their eyes were wide open as they looked at the black pagoda monument. Everyone knew that the ranking on the pagoda monument this time would be the preliminary ranking of their 100 Empire ranking. Although it was not completely real, it possessed absolute authority. The disparity would not be too great. SSSS. A majestic and dense aura accompanied the resplendent golden light. When the transfer array gradually disappeared and no more cultivators walked out, the resplendent golden light on the black pagoda tablet finally began to weaken until it completely disappeared. One by one, the golden names finally stopped. Gao Jianfei. Voila! When they saw the name at the top of the black pagoda monument, countless cultivators immediately cried out in alarm. The Wind Cloud Empire's Gao Jianfei was already someone that everyone knew. He was originally ranked second. However, at this moment, he was ranked first. Meng Yi, who was originally ranked first, was now ranked second. What shocked all the cultivators, including the sex experts, were the two people ranked third and 10th. Lung Yihan and Chun Hao. When Lung Yihan and Chun Hao started their training, they were both rank 8 martial emperors. However, at this moment, one was ranked third and the other was ranked 10th. After all, he had defeated 2 rank 6 martial ancestor realm participants ranked third in the Sky Tyrant Empire. However, although the rank 8 martial emperor Chun Hao was ranked first in the Xuanwu Empire, the person ranked below him was only a rank 2 martial ancestor realm. Yet now, Chun Hao had risen to 10th and obtained the qualifications to become a seated participant. This was simply unimaginable. Dongfang Ting rubbed her eyes. She thought that she was seeing things. However, Chun Hao's name was indeed ranked 10th. Xian Xian also opened her little mouth in shock. She did not dare to believe her eyes. Following that, cries of alarm began to sound from the entire martial practice ground. They were either cries of joy after seeing their own rankings or sighs of disappointment after seeing their own rankings. Or they were shocked by the rankings of someone they knew. When Tantai Lien and the others saw that Chun Hao was ranked 10th, other than being pleasantly surprised, they did not seem to be surprised in the slightest. That was the truth. At this moment, no one knew better than the four of them how abnormal Chun Hao was. When Chun Hao was a rank 2 martial ancestor realm, he was able to kill rank 7 martial ancestor realm cultivators like killing chickens. Now that he was a rank 9 martial ancestor realm cultivator, who could possibly defeat him? To the four of them, being ranked 10th did not match Chun Hao's true battle strength at all. 30th. Chun Hao, I'm ranked 30. After Tantai Lien saw her own ranking, she immediately spoke in a pleasantly surprised manner. In the past, she had been ranked last. Even now, when she recalled the situation back then, she felt embarrassed. Fortunately, Chun Hao had reminded her in time. As for now, she was able to increase her ranking to such a level. Tantai Lien knew very well that it was all thanks to Chun Hao. I'm ranked 123. Yang Fan also said in a slightly excited manner. 249. Ni Giant Pain said as he clenched his fist. Damn, I'm the lowest. Only 282. Li Yifeng seemed to be very dissatisfied as he spoke. However, the smile on his face showed that he was very satisfied. Not bad. I believe that your true battle strength should be higher, Chun Hao said with a slight smile. Chun Hao, thank you, Yang Fan said as he stared at Chun Hao. Thank you. Without you, we wouldn't have our current results. No need to thank me. We're brothers. Don't treat me as an outsider. Haha. Li Yifeng, who was more carefree than Yang Fan and Ni Giant Pain, said bluntly. However, the way he looked at Chun Hao was no different from the way he looked at the other two. Tantai Lien's face was slightly red, but she did not say anything. This is only the preliminary rankings. The real competition has yet to begin. Don't relax now, Chun Hao said. Of course not. Chun Hao, not bad. What a strong aura. At this moment, a voice entered Chun Hao's ears. The arrogant Lung Yihan appeared in front of Chun Hao out of thin air. His sharp eyes carried an aura of inspection as he looked at Chun Hao with surprise. Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three were slightly surprised. They did not know that Chun Hao and Lung Yihan knew each other. They thought that he was looking for trouble. The four of them immediately stood beside Chun Hao. You're not bad either. Third place, much higher than me, Chun Hao said with a slight smile as he gently waved his hand at Tantai Lien and the other three. You've improved more than me, Lung Yihan said as he looked at Tantai Lien and the other three. His eyes also carried a trace of shock as he said, It seems that your encounters are quite interesting. If I had known earlier, I would have been with you. I'm only a 6th grade martial ancestor now. Grade is just a concept. It doesn't affect you, Chun Hao said. Hearing Chun Hao's words, Lung Yihan shook his head slightly and said, It seems that I still need to break through a little. Chun Hao, do you want to bet with me? Bet? What bet? Bet on the rankings. In the final ranking, I'll be higher than you. Promise me one thing. If you're higher than me, I'll promise you one thing. 4th place may not be in good condition after midnight. For those who can't wait, you can look at it tomorrow. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote for it at Chidian. Come. Your support is my greatest motivation. However, Yang Fan, Ni Giant Pain, and Li Yifeng should be very happy. However, what she didn't expect was that no matter if it was Chun Hao, Tantai Lien, or Yang Fan's group of 3, they actually weren't excited at all. It was even to the extent that they looked at her with strange gazes. What? Could it be that you don't like our flying sword faction? Xianxian's expression changed slightly as she looked at the 5 of them and asked, Senior Sister Xianxian, I'm sorry. Originally, we might have chosen the flying sword faction. After all, we have Senior Sister's protection. But now, forgive me for being blunt, but we'd rather go to a low-grade sect than the flying sword faction. Li Yifeng didn't even frown as he spoke frankly and straightforwardly. Why? Xianxian looked a little embarrassed as she stared at Li Yifeng and asked, If it weren't for our luck, we would have died at the hands of your flying sword faction disciples. We don't want to go in and be suppressed. What? There's such a thing? That's the truth, Yang Fan said indifferently. How is that possible? Our sect's disciples who went on the training specially emphasized before the training to not have any conflicts with your 100 Empire ranking disciples. Tell me, no matter who it is, I'll report it to the elders and punish them severely. Don't worry. What's that disciple's name? Xian asked with a trace of anger. Clearly, she was very dissatisfied with the person who had ruined her recruitment of her own people and her strength in the Flying Sword faction. How can there be no one? Come here, all of you. When Xian came to find Chun Hao, the Flying Sword faction elder who was with her looked at the name on the black pagoda stele twice, but still couldn't find the person he was looking for. At this moment, he stood up and transmitted his voice to the lesser heaven stage outer sect disciples of the Flying Sword faction who had already gathered to participate in the training. Elder, Tai Zigong was the first to rush over. His expression was unsightly. Fan Fong's sister, Fan Yin, did you meet her? Elder, I met her. She's dead. She was killed by someone. Forgive this disciple's incompetence, but the person is very strong. What? Who is it? The elder asked in shock. Tai Zigong was the strongest disciple of the Flying Sword faction who had comprehended the true meaning of half-step space energy. How could he have seen her and been unable to protect her? Who could be so strong? The one ranked 10th on the pagoda stele, Chun Hao. The elder was dumbfounded when he heard this familiar name. Chun Hao was the person Xian wanted to rope in, and also the person the Flying Sword faction wanted to win over. How could there be such a coincidence? It's that. Why is Senior Xian with them? Tai Zigong had long noticed the position of Chun Hao and the others, but he didn't dare to disturb the elder when he was looking at the pagoda stele. He didn't expect that in such a short time, Senior Xian, an intersect disciple of the Flying Sword faction, would be standing with Chun Hao and the others, as if they were talking about something. Xian was the genius girl of the Flying Sword faction, and if there were no accidents, she would be promoted to a core disciple in less than a year. She was also a well-known figure in the Flying Sword faction. That Chun Hao can defeat you? The elder's expression became extremely conflicted as he stared at Tai Zigong and asked. He's very strong. At that time, he had just entered the Shenwu relic. He was only a low-grade martial great master, but together with a girl called Tantai Lien, he obtained the inheritance of the Phoenix. The inheritance of the Phoenix? You're saying Chun Hao obtained the inheritance of the Phoenix? The elder asked in shock. Yes, elder, I'm no match for him. And even if Chun Hao didn't use the power of the inheritance, he wasn't any weaker than me at that time. And now, he should be even stronger. Tai Zigong didn't want to admit it, but when he thought of the battle with Chun Hao, he had to admit it. And since he couldn't save Fan Yin, he couldn't say that he was stronger than Chun Hao. Hearing Tai Zigong's affirmative answer, the elder was shocked and helpless at the same time. Fan Fong was a rare genius in the Flying Sword faction. Although he was only an intersect disciple now, he had only been in the Flying Sword faction for 2 years, and he already had the ability to challenge a core disciple, but his level was not enough. He was much stronger than Xian. He was someone that even the Flying Sword faction leader thought highly of. If not, he wouldn't have been so concerned about Fan Fong's request. But now, what a sin. We can only ignore this matter. Sigh. If it wasn't for this conflict, if Chun Hao could enter the Flying Sword faction. The elder shook his head and said, he didn't know if Xian could pull Chun Hao into the Flying Sword faction. But looking at the current situation, there was probably no hope. He seemed to see a situation where Fan Fong would fight to the death with Chun Hao. If Chun Hao entered the Flying Sword faction, it wouldn't take long for him to be killed. If he entered other factions, he would also be hunted down by Fan Fong. And if Chun Hao could grow up smoothly, it was hard to say who would win and who would die in the future between him and Fan Fong. The inheritance of the Phoenix was one of the most powerful inheritances in the legends of the Shenwu ruins, and even in the world of cultivation, it couldn't be taken lightly. Plus, Chun Hao's abnormal talent. Let's call him Tai Zigong. Li Feng said. Tai Zigong? Xian frowned slightly. Obviously, she didn't know much about outer sect disciples. Okay, he's just a small outer sect disciple. Don't worry, I guarantee that he will be punished according to the sect rules, and won't dare to do anything against you. That's not important. At this moment, Chun Hao suddenly said, Tai Zigong just wanted to save someone, and I killed someone. Her name is Fanine. I heard that her brother is... What? You killed? Fanine? Senior Xian Xian, you know? Seeing Xian Xian's shocked expression, Chen Hao frowned slightly and asked. Xian Xian didn't know the names of outer sect disciples, but Fanine, a disciple on the 100 Empire ranking, was known to Xian Xian. Immediately, Chun Hao understood that Xian Xian's brother must be a very famous person in the Flying Sword faction. Not only do I know you, Sai, forget it. I originally wanted to pull you into the Flying Sword faction so that you can have some help when I become a core disciple. But now it seems that it's impossible. If I pull you in, even I won't be able to save your lives. Chen Hao, you can choose as high-level a sect as you can. Also, after entering the sect, no matter what mission it is, you must be careful when you come out. Fan Yin's brother, Fan Fong, is a super genius of the century in the Flying Sword faction. He was promoted to an inner sect disciple in 2 years, and broke through from the martial ancestor realm to the golden core realm. Alright, that's it. Work hard. Our Xuanwu Empire has never had such good results, but if you die in Fan Fong's hands, everything will be gone. After Xian Xian finished speaking, she stared deeply at Chun Hao, shook her head, and floated away. Dongfang Ting also looked at Chun Hao in astonishment. Chun Hao's expression didn't change at all. Instead, a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He said, Senior sister, I suddenly feel that Xian Xian is just a little arrogant and overbearing. In fact, she's not that annoying. You still have a mood to think about this? Dongfang Ting stared at Chun Hao. Then what should I think about? I've heard of Fan Fong. There are many geniuses in the sect. Those who are promoted to the sect from the 100 Empire ranking are all mediocre. Fan Fong, on the other hand, stands out for the crowd. Most of the talented direct disciples in the world of cultivation cannot compare to him. Xian Xian is right. You must be careful. Seeking monthly votes. Seeking recommendation votes. I didn't expect to complete the mission in advance. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Comp to vote. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 180. Sorry for being late by more than an hour. The plot twist was written super slowly. It took almost 6 hours. Disciples of the 100 Empire ranking. Old Man is the manager of the 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce, Lu Wuxiang. First of all, Old Man represents the 50 great sects that organized this year's 100 Empire ranking to congratulate all of you on successfully completing your training. A few minutes later, a white-haired old man with a youthful complexion and an amiable face stepped on an auspicious cloud and slowly landed on the rostrum as he spoke softly. His faint and not loud voice clearly traveled into the ears of the disciples who were still discussing spiritedly. The entire martial arts practice field immediately quieted down. Your luck for this year's 100 Empire ranking is very good. You've encountered a powerful area that is rarely seen in the divine martial remains. It's much better than the areas that have been opened in the past. The inheritance and improvement you've obtained from the remains are also better than the previous years. However, this is only the beginning. 3 days later, the 100 Empire ranking competition will officially begin. The 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce is one of the 5 great chambers of commerce in the Eastern Continent. It is also the manager in charge of organizing this year's 100 Empire ranking. There are tens of thousands of sects in the Eastern Continent. Not all sects participate in the 100 Empire ranking that is held every 2 years. Every year, 50 sects will be chosen from those who have signed up. Your training grounds, expenses, etc. will all be funded by these 50 sections. The higher the grade of the sect, the greater the amount of funding. Dongfang Ting, who is still beside Chun Hao's group of 5, explained while the old man spoke. Senior sister, I've also heard of the Dragon Transformation ranking. Do you know of it? When a manager of the 1,000 Treasures Chamber of Commerce, Lu Wuxiang, began to introduce the details of the 50 sects one by one, Chen Hao could not help but asked the question in his heart. He had already known from Xia Yuyu that the Dragon Transformation ranking was in existence higher than the 100 Empire ranking. But now, it seemed that they only needed the 100 Empire ranking to enter the sex of the cultivation world. Furthermore, until now, no one had mentioned the Dragon Transformation ranking. Of course I know. The Dragon Transformation ranking is in existence higher than the 100 Empire ranking. The intensity of the competition is far from what the 100 Empire ranking can compare to. You will naturally know these things when you truly begin to live in the cultivation world. The Dragon Transformation List was a competition set up by the entire Eastern Continent's cultivation world for those cultivators who did not belong to any sections. In other words, they were loose cultivators or the genius disciples of the super dynasties, large clans, and forces of the cultivation world that did not belong to any sect. The so-called Dragon Transformation was like a fish leaping over the Dragon Gate, reaching the heavens in a single bound. It was also one of the ways the sect selected disciples. Compared to the 100 Empire rankings, there are many more choices. All the sects in the cultivation world of the Eastern Continent pay close attention to it. What are the conditions to participate? Chen Hao asked. Why? Do you want to participate? Dongfang Ting asked, slightly taken aback. I just want to know more, Chen Hao said. Below the age of 20, with a cultivation level of 6-stage martial saint and above, and without the restrictions of a sex identity. These are the 3 basic conditions. It's meaningless to you. Why is it meaningless? It's very simple. With your current cultivation and talent, the 3 rank 7 sects in the 100 Empire ranking will fight over you. Once you enter a sect, you will be a sect disciple. With this status, you will lose the right to participate in the Dragon Transformation List. After all, the Dragon Transformation List is also used by sects to select disciples. In the cultivation world, no sect will allow betrayal. You also heard that the 3 rank 7 sects are the 10,000 Pill Pavilion, Nirvana Valley, and Celestial Apex sect. Although they're all rank 7 sects, the 10,000 Pill Pavilion is undoubtedly the strongest. The 10,000 Pill Pavilion is famous in the alchemy world. Although it is only a rank 7 sect, due to the number of experts, the treatment of the 10,000 Pill Pavilion disciples is no less than that of rank 8 or even rank 9 sects. Their wealth is not something an ordinary sect can compare to. Senior Sister's Sword Intent. You choose the 10,000 Pill Pavilion. Dongfang Ting said. Oh, we'll see when the time comes. Seeing that Dongfang Ting had changed the topic, Chen Hao said in a low voice, Senior Sister, do you mean that once the 100 Empire ranking is out, the disciples must choose a sect to enter? Chen Hao, you don't tell me you really want to participate in the Dragon Transformation List? Dongfang Ting saw that Chen Hao did not let go of his question. Clearly, it was not as simple as he said. Don't have such thoughts. Only the super geniuses in the top 3 of the 100 Empire ranking can give up the chance to choose. However, you're only a rank 9 martial ancestor now. Even if you are in the top 3, if you do not choose a sect, you will become a loose cultivator. That is definitely not possible. Not to mention that you have offended Fan Fong of the Flying Sword sect. Even if you did not offend anyone, without the protection of a sect and the benefits of cultivation, you will not be able to advance furthermore. You are only a rank 9 martial ancestor now. You do not meet the requirements. Furthermore, the Dragon Transformation List is released every 2 years. This time, it already ended last month. This means that even if you are in the top 3 and can give up the chance to choose, you must be a rank 6, Martial Saint, and can only participate 2 years later. How could Fan Fong let you go in 2 years? Without the protection of a sect, he can kill you anytime, anywhere, as long as he finds you. Chen Hao nodded and did not say anything else. However, he already had his own thoughts in his heart. After Lu Wuxiang finished introducing all the sects, he arranged the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking into courtyards in the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. He also announced the method and rules of the 100 Empire ranking competition 3 days later. In reality, it was only the method. There were still no rules. 5 rays of light streaked across the sky. Under the guidance of the aura of the token, Chen Hao, Tantai Lien, and the other four arrived at a small mountain peak within 1,000 miles of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. At the peak of the mountain, clouds curled up and covered by auspicious clouds. A courtyard that seemed like a paradise occupied the center of the mountain peak. This was only one of the many courtyards in the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. However, it was comparable to the manner of a large clan in the secular world. The dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth was incomparable to that of the secular world. Li Yifeng broke the silence and said with a smile, "Phew. The world of cultivation is indeed not something the Empire can compare to. It's no wonder that the disciples who were able to enter the 100 Empire ranking were able to leave their peers in the dust when they returned to the Empire a few years later. Hall Master Mu Qing was a god in our hearts back then. Compared to her, even Senior Dongfang Ting is probably inferior." They had heard the conversation between Chen Hao and Dongfang Ting clearly. Although they had only known each other for 6 months, the things that Chen Hao had brought to them were absolutely unimaginable. Of course, their understanding of Chen Hao was probably not something that Dongfang Ting could compare to. Therefore, although Chen Hao did not say anything in the end, they had already guessed that Chen Hao's goal had already left the 100 Empire ranking. This made the four of them somewhat conflicted. In particular, Li Yifeng could not bear to look at Tantai Lien, who had a bitter and silent expression on her face. After 6 months, Li Yifeng, who understood women the best, naturally discovered Tantai Lien's thoughts. "Indeed," Chen Hao said with a slight smile. After his gaze swept across the four of them, he looked into the distance and said, "All good things must come to an end. I know that all of you have already seen through my thoughts. Although I don't know much about the world of cultivation, I think that the grade of the sect is actually not important. What truly depends on oneself. I have a reason to participate in the Dragon Transformation list, but it is definitely not for a higher grade sect. When the time comes, all of you will naturally understand. Then what are you doing it for?" Hearing Chen Hao's words, the four of them were slightly taken aback. Tantai Lien could not help but ask. Chen Hao glanced at Tantai Lien. After pondering for a moment, he shifted his gaze and looked into the distance. His gaze became bitter, but it was also close to indifference. He hardened his heart and said softly, "A girl. She should still be alive. A girl." Tantai Lien was instantly taken aback. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Giant Pain also widened their eyes in shock. Chen Hao did not give the four of them, especially Tantai Lien, time to be surprised. He said directly, "All right, all of you return to your rooms to cultivate. In 3 days, the competition will officially begin. As for which sect you can enter, it will be up to you. However, I have a suggestion that you can listen to. Of course, the choice is still up to you." Chen Hao said, "The division of sect from grade 1 to 9 is definitely not as simple as the division of cultivators. Otherwise, wouldn't the grade 1 and grade 2 sects have long been destroyed? For a sect, even a grade 1 sect, to be able to stand tall in the world of cultivation, it must have its own advantages. You've all heard the introductions to the various sections. Each of them has their own strengths. So, when you're choosing a sect, don't just limit yourself to the level of the sect. What you should consider more is which sect is most suitable for you. Go." After Chen Hao finished speaking, his figure flashed and he walked into a room. Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Giant Pain glanced at Tantai Lien, whose face was slightly pale and her delicate body was slightly trembling. They could only sigh in their hearts and quietly walked into their own rooms. Tantai Lien didn't know how long she had been standing outside. It wasn't until the sky was completely dark and the cool mountain breeze blew her thin clothes and messed up her long hair that she came back to her senses. She gently wiped the corners of her eyes and walked back to her room. There were no feelings in the first place. They walked together because they were both disciples of the Xuanwu Empire. In the 6 months that they were together, other than cultivating and fighting, it was still cultivating and fighting. What did they have between them? What did she understand about him? Nothing at all, other than his name and his talent. She knew nothing about him. So what if he saved her life? So what if he helped her cultivate? He only treated her as the same existence as Yang Fan and the other two. The only difference was that they both received the Phoenix inheritance. But after all, they were not Phoenix and Phoenix. At this time, he clearly said that it was for a girl. What did that mean? He already had someone he liked. The other party was not her. She could only be envious and jealous of her. Even though they had gone through that naked scene, it was still when they received the inheritance. They were forced to do so. Moreover, nothing had happened. Why should he be responsible? It's just my wishful thinking. Tantai Lien took one last look at Chun Hao's room and murmured. Then, she walked into her own room. Those who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. There will be more updates today. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 181. Requesting monthly votes. Thank you. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. In these 3 days, the outer sect elders of the 50 sects who were in charge of recruiting disciples all rushed to Green Fluorescent City, which was thousands of miles away from the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Green Fluorescent City was the largest city within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. Countless merchants gathered there, and it was one of the largest trading cities for cultivators in the eastern continent. It was also one of the gathering places for independent cultivators, large clans, and other forces. It was extremely prosperous and densely populated. Today, early in the morning, tens of thousands of people had gathered at the largest martial arts practice field of Green Fluorescent City's Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, and they were still pouring in. These people were young and old, men and women. Some had high cultivation, and many had low cultivation. However, most of them were below the martial arts grandmaster realm. The so-called cultivation world did not only consist of experts. The people who were born and raised here could be found everywhere. They had no cultivation at all, and they made up the vast majority. Just like the secular world, most of them were ordinary people, and only a few were cultivators. It was the same in the cultivation world. They were just natives of the cultivation world, and they had the right to live in the cultivation world from birth. It was unlike the secular world, where one had to go through layers of selections to obtain the right to enter the cultivation world. Of course, after entering the cultivation world with such difficulty, their status would also surpass that of ordinary people, and they would become the sect disciples that the natives of the cultivation world yearned for and envied. This time, in addition to the outer sect elder in charge of recruiting disciples, there were also many inner sect disciples from the 50 sections. These inner sect disciples were basically from the 100 Empire ranking. The reason why they came was that they might be able to rope in disciples they liked in their sections. Just like the relationship between Dongfang Ting, Xian Xian, and the others in Chun Hao's group of 5. With this relationship, at least Chun Hao's group of 5 would consider the sects that Dongfang Ting and Xian Xian belonged to. Among these inner sect disciples, Fan Fong of the Flying Sword sect was among them. Early in the morning, he sat gloomily in the Flying Sword sect's VIP seat, waiting alone. It had been 6 months. When he had obtained his sister's death from the Seal of Life and Death, he had wanted nothing more than to crush the person who had killed his sister. However, he could only endure because the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking were still training. Even if they had finished their training, he still had to endure. He could only wait until the end of the 100 Empire rankings before he would have a chance to take revenge. Seated contestant, Chun Hao, I like to see how capable you are. Phoenix inheritance. Don't even think about being a match for me once you've truly grown up. What's more, do you think I, Fan Fong, will give you the chance to grow? 3 days ago, when the elders of the Flying Sword sect, Xian Xian, and the other outer sect disciples had rushed to the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, he had already obtained the name of the person who had killed his sister from Taizigong. Originally, he didn't know what Chun Hao's name was. He only saw the appearance of the person who killed his sister when she was on the verge of death in the Seal of Life and Death. Now, he finally found a match. Dong! Dong! A rising sun slowly rose from the east, accompanied by the melodious sound of a bell. The boundary of the myriad treasures chamber of commerce's core martial arts practice field slowly opened. Countless spectators immediately looked up at the sky. The densely packed cultivators flying in the air were like locusts approaching from afar, appearing before everyone's eyes. Every one of them was extremely young, and their faces were filled with excitement and anticipation. These people were the disciples of the 100 Empire ranking who had rushed over from the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce's base. Under the leadership of Lu Wuxiang and several experts of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce, they directly landed on a contestant's seat in the martial arts practice field that could accommodate 5,000 people. When Chun Hao and the other disciples saw the dense crowd in the martial arts practice field, as well as the terrifying martial arts practice field that could accommodate hundreds of thousands of people, they all revealed a look of horror. They had never heard of a martial arts practice field of this level, let alone seen one. Especially before the restriction of the martial arts practice field was opened, they looked at it from the air and it was only 1,000 feet in size. However, after entering, they discovered that it was a completely different world. It was obvious that it contained an extremely powerful spatial restriction. Layers of stairs rose up, forming circles of circular grandstands. At the lowest point of the grandstand's core, there was a circular platform with a diameter of 3,000 feet. On the platform, there was a core main arena. 10 small arenas were evenly distributed around the main arena. Although they were called small arenas, they were larger than all the arenas Chun Hao had seen, not to mention the incomparably huge main arena. What a strong aura! This year's 100 Empire ranking is indeed the strongest in recent years. It's said that it has something to do with the opening of the Shenwu ruins this time. Many people have obtained powerful inheritances. Yes. The Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce has made a lot of money this time. 2 days ago, they announced that several people had obtained the inheritances of divine beasts. With the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce's reputation, they shouldn't be spreading the news to earn entrance fees. Of course not. According to reliable sources, some people have obtained the Phoenix and Azure Dragon inheritances. As for the rest, I'm not sure yet. Who cares? Anyway, I'm going to gamble big this time, hee. A small gamble is good for the mood. A big gamble is bad for the body. I'm not as lucky as you. I'll just gamble a little. Watching the 3,000 or so disciples of the 100 Empire rankings slowly descending, the densely packed crowd in the martial arts arena buzzed with discussion. There was still a large crowd at the entrance of the martial arts arena. Fan Fang's gaze locked on Chun Hao the moment Chun Hao and the others appeared. Chun Hao's vigorous and condensed aura, coupled with his extraordinarily handsome appearance, if not for the fact that he was an enemy, even Fan Fang would have to secretly praise him. Just this unique calmness and composure alone was enough to qualify him to be in the top 10 of the 100 Empire ranking. But at this moment, Fan Fang's gaze on Chun Hao was filled with a monstrous, murderous intent and anger. If he had not tried his best to restrain himself, he would have shocked everyone by now. But even so, it made the people around him cast sidelong glances at him. In particular, Xian Xian, who had just arrived, frowned slightly. She wanted to resolve it, but she knew that it was impossible. She could only worry for Chun Hao and secretly pray that he would not fall into Fan Fang's hands. 7 in the morning, 9 in the morning. 50 old men with white hair and ruddy complexions, exuding a terrifying and dignified aura, landed on the rostrum on auspicious clouds and sat down. The referees of the 10-sided arena also took their places. The manager in charge of the 100 Empire ranking this time, Lu Wuxiang, slowly landed on the main stage. He had a warm smile on his face. After bowing slightly to the audience, he said in a deep voice, "This year's 100 Empire ranking competition officially begins." Hiss, hiss, hiss. As soon as Lu Wuxiang's words fell, a violent energy fluctuation suddenly appeared above the huge main arena. Rays of golden light flashed, and a huge black tower tablet appeared out of thin air. It stood tall in the middle of the main arena. Golden names appeared on all 4 sides of the main arena. The 4 sides were exactly the same, and the cultivators were divided into 10 groups. The 10 seeded contestants were divided into 10 groups. And at this moment, in each group, the names of the two contestants were side by side, connected by a golden line. Obviously, this was the opponent that each of them would face in the first round. The 10 seeded contestants are divided into 10 groups, with 328 people in each group. There are a total of 3,280 disciples. The list of opponents for the first round of elimination has been decided. The 10-sided arena will open at the same time. Now, the competition officially begins. Following Liu Wuxiang's crisp voice, the referees of the 10-sided arena appeared one after another. First group, first round, seeded contestant Gao Jianfei versus Yang Wei. Please enter the arena. Second group, first round, seeded contestant Meng Yi versus Chen Jun. Please enter the arena. Third group, first round, seeded contestant Lung Yihan versus Fan Zhe. Please enter the arena. 10th group, first round, seeded contestant Chun Hao versus Qiu Qianli. Please enter the arena. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Following the loud voice of the referees of the 10-sided arena, 10 figures rose into the air without any hesitation and flew directly to their respective arenas. These 10 people were the 10 seeded contestants, and the other 10 people's faces turned green. It was undoubtedly extremely unlucky to encounter the strongest seeded contestant in the first round of elimination. Moreover, these 10 people were all in the middle of the 3,000 disciples. This arrangement was equivalent to following the Black Tower tablets ranking. Those above the middle were the advanced group, and those below the middle were the lower group. The strongest contestant of the advanced group was going against the strongest contestant of the lower group. It was very reasonable. But now, these 10 people would rather be ranked lower or higher. At least they would have a chance to perform. I admit defeat. Although unwilling, the 10 people all chose to admit defeat without exception. This arrangement made it so that in the first round, there were more than 100 battles in each group. Only 10 or so people would fight on the arena, and the others would all admit defeat. No one dared to joke with their lives. To be able to make it this far, they would at least be able to enter a lower sect. It was better than risking their lives knowing that they could not win. That would be too stupid, and in the 10 groups, there were more than 100 people fighting on the arena. Very few of the lower-ranked contestants won, only 7 of them. In the first round, Chun Hao and the other 4 all won, and none of them had to fight. At the end of the first round, half of the disciples were eliminated. There were only 164 people left in each group. Next, the arrangement of the second round was still the same as the first round. There were still many people who admitted defeat. But this time, there were several times more people who did not admit defeat in the lower group than in the first round. The 10 seeded contestants still did not have a chance to fight. Tantai Lian was ranked 30th overall, and she was in the same group as Chun Hao. She was the 3rd expert in the 10th group. Basically, the top 3 experts in each group did not have a chance to fight in the second round. Yang Fan, Enai Jianpain, and Li Yifeng all fought and won. The 5 of them advanced again. After the 2 rounds, there were only 82 people in each group. The arrangement did not change, but in the 3rd round, except for the 10 seeded contestants, no one admitted defeat in any of the battles. The gap between each group was not too big. Everyone wanted to go on the arena and show off their talents so that the elders of the 50 sects would notice them. If they could catch the attention of a powerful sect, it would naturally be better. Tantai, Lian, and Yang Fan won easily. Enai Jianpain and Li Yifeng won with difficulty. At the end of the 3rd round, there were only 41 people left in each group. At this time, the Black Pagoda tablet selected the 2 weakest people in each group to fight based on their combat power in the first 3 rounds. The loser would be eliminated. The winner would be in the top 40 of the group. Then, the 4th and 5th rounds began. Finally, when the sky was almost dark, the top 10 of each group were decided. Chun Hao did not have a chance to fight, and Tantai Lian advanced to the top 10 easily. Yang Fan, who had comprehended the true essence of the wind element, also advanced to the top 10 easily. Meanwhile, N.I. Giant Pain and Li Yifeng lost in the 5th round. Such a result was within his expectations. The real exciting battles were the round-robin matches after the top 10. It would officially begin tomorrow. Second update. Looking for monthly votes. Recommendation votes. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 182. Third update. Those who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. It was night. The night sky was clear, and the stars were shining brightly. In a cultivation room in a courtyard on the top of a mountain, there was a dense aura. A young man was sitting cross-legged, floating in midair. His body was shining with a resplendent 7-colored light that was incomparably intense. This kind of aura was clearly in existence that had already comprehended the mysteries of the 5 elements. What was even more shocking was that a coiled creature vaguely appeared above his head. Although it was only a few dozen feet long and was only an illusion, it made the young man's aura many times more terrifying. If anyone saw this creature, they would definitely be extremely shocked. Azure Dragon. Boom. As the dense aura around the young man's body became thicker and thicker, the moment it reached its peak, the young man's clothes suddenly exploded with a boom. In an instant, an extremely bright 7-colored light shone out, and the entire training room rumbled and shook. If this training room was the kind of training room in a mortal world, it would have collapsed directly. Roar! At that moment, the coiled azure dragon above the young man's head suddenly flew up and let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the heavens and earth. Even the powerful restrictions of the cultivation room were unable to stop the dragon's roar. In an instant, the mountain peak within a radius of a few hundred miles began to tremble. Rumbling sounds could be heard as countless rocks rolled down from the mountain peak. The huge commotion caused countless cultivators to walk out of their training rooms in shock. Whoosh! In the training room, the soaring azure dragon circled a few times above the young man's head and then directly entered between the young man's eyebrows. Crack! Crack! At that moment, the young man's completely naked body emitted strange cracking sounds. Sparkling and translucent azure dragon scales started to form on the young man's skin. First, it was his hands and feet, then his arms, legs, and then his body. Gradually, it spread to his face. His entire body was completely covered by the dragon scales. The young man opened his eyes and stared at his own body with great excitement. Then his 5 fingers opened into a claw. Immediately, his hands strangely began to grow, and in an instant, it became an extremely sharp dragon claw. Just the aura alone was terrifying to the extreme. I have finally completely merged with the inheritance of the divine beast azure dragon. Ha ha ha, just in time, very good. Ha ha. I've only completed the first step of fusion. What's there to be excited about? At this moment, a childish voice sounded in the young man's mind. The voice was childish, but it sounded old. Of course I am. If I could have gotten my hands on you earlier in the Shunwu ruins, and not at the last moment, why would I have to risk my life now? Among the 10 seeded players, there will definitely be a place for me. Fortunately, they had finally fused tonight. Otherwise, if they were unlucky and met that kid tomorrow and were eliminated, wouldn't that be a pity? Now, not only have I succeeded in fusing with the divine light, I have also borrowed your power to break through to rank 1 martial saint. Ha ha ha. How could I not be excited? What Bulsh Asterisk T-seeded player, the champion of the 100 Empire rankings, is none other than me. Ha ha ha. Don't be too complacent. Since you've obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon, the inheritances of the White Tiger, the Black Tortoise, the Vermilion Bird, the Qilin, and the Phoenix should also have appeared. The Vermilion Bird is the most troublesome, and the Phoenix is troublesome as well. However, this is a one-on-one competition. Facing the Phoenix and the Phoenix alone is not a threat to you. The others are about the same. The key is still up to you. I'm already a martial sage. Who can compare to me? It's said that the seeded player in my group, Chun Hao, is the one who obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. then he should have only obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. He's not a threat, as long as you're stronger than him. Of course, he's only a rank 9 martial ancestor. Although it's said that he's a very abnormal guy, I'm now a martial sage. Why would I be afraid of him? I can truly use the energy of the 5 elements. Haha, I can feel that my current strength has increased by tens of times. I was originally ranked 20, only 10 places away from him. I'm actually looking forward to meeting him tomorrow. The aura of the Azure Dragon. Chen Hao, there's indeed someone who obtained the Azure Dragon's inheritance. White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, Qilin, there's definitely someone who obtained it too. Little Bird said with a trace of surprise in Chen Hao's mind. At almost the same time, there were 4 other youths, 2 males and 2 females, who had the same conversation with Chen Hao on the other 4 mountain peaks. However, those 4 youths, after a short moment of shock, began to madly cultivate, making the final dash. This was completely different from the majority of the top 10 disciples in the group, because at this moment, the competition had already begun. It was too late to work hard now. Adjusting oneself to the best state and facing it with the best mentality was the best choice. But these 4 people were different. Because they were the same as that youth, they had obtained the White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, Black Tortoise, and Qilin's inheritance respectively. However, until now, they had not truly completed the first step of the fusion. Chen Hao, if you meet them, you have to be careful. Sai, are you really not going to be with Xiao Yan? I mean, in the future, there's no other way for the competition now. But in the future, only when Phoenix and I work together can we unleash our true power. Alone, there's no way we can contend against the 5 divine beasts. I've never thought of borrowing the strength of your inheritance. Chen Hao said bluntly. Is there a way for you and Phoenix to give it to Xiao Yan? There is. There is? Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, you would have reunited earlier. Tell me how to do it. It's very simple. As long as you and Xiao Yan have yin and yang intercourse and let her truly reach the realm of yin and yang balance. Phoenix, and I could do any of you. That's equivalent to not saying anything. Go back to your nest. Don't bother me. Chen Hao said with a frown. Right now, he was indeed a little annoyed, because there were some things that even he himself did not know whether he was doing the right thing or not. The previous to him did not have any emotional experience. One was Xia Yuyu, whom he had met by accident, as if it was destined by fate. The other was Helian Wuzi, whom he had molested and had developed feelings for, especially when he thought of Helian Wuzi, who had never truly exposed her feelings, crazily hitting the transmission light pillar with tears streaming down her face. Moreover, he was certain that 2 years later, Helian Wuzi would definitely be able to stand out from the 100 Empire rankings. These 2 already made him not know where to go. He could not tell which was more important and which was less. He could only let nature take its course and take 1 step at a time. How could he dare to do more? Moreover, right now, he did not want to have any emotional fetters. This was also one of the main reasons why he did not want to choose a sect on the 100 Empire rankings. Otherwise, there was no doubt that Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the others would choose the same sect as him. Moreover, with Tantai Lien's talent, there was probably no sect that would reject her. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Giant Pain also had high hopes. Therefore, when Tantai Lien asked why, he said that it was for a girl, for a breath of air. In reality, it was just for a breath of air. He, who exuded arrogance from his bones, would ruthlessly slap anyone who had once despised and ridiculed him. He wanted to let Xia Yuyu's family see that he, an insignificant person in a small county in the secular world, was not inferior to any bullshit genius. Therefore, he wanted to stand out from the rest on the dragon transformation list and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. He wanted to become a target that the top sects of the Eastern continent would fight over. Only then would he be able to vent the depression in his heart, cutting off the distracting thoughts in his mind. Chen Hao immersed himself in the comprehension of merging with the world. Today's group competition for the top 10 will be a round-robin competition. You will draw lots to determine your opponents. Each person will have 2 matches per day. The first and second place contestants will advance from their groups and enter the top 20 overall. All contestants, please step onto the stage and draw lots. The next day, the group competition for the top 10 officially began. The martial arts arena, which could hold hundreds of thousands of people, was filled to the brim today. Countless rogue cultivators, sect disciples, and experts from large families and factions rushed into the arena. At least half of them were here to make a bet. In the long life of the cultivation world, this was undoubtedly one of the greatest pleasures. Especially for the sect disciples, the poorer rogue cultivators were even more enthusiastic about it. Soon, the results of the draw were out. Each group of 10 contestants drew a number from 1 to 10. In the first round, number 1 would fight number 2, number 3 would fight number 4, and so on. Each group would have 5 matches. The 10 groups would proceed with their matches one by one. After completing the first round, they would all fight in the central arena. First group, first match, number 1, Liu Ran, and number 2, 1E. Please step onto the stage. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures immediately flew from the contestants' seats to the arena. The aura around them bloomed as they flew. 1E, ranked 11th on the pagoda stele, and Liu Ran, ranked 91st. There's no suspense in the outcome. If nothing unexpected happens, Liu Ran will lose. The odds for this match aren't high. I bet 100,000 grade 8 spirit pills. Even if I win, I'll only earn 10,000 pills. Your way of betting is too steady. You won't make a fortune. I only bet 10,000 pills on Wani winning. If I win, I'll earn 100,000 pills. Ha! That's a waste. What if? Don't forget that guy's name is Wani. Wani. If he loses, won't I make a fortune? Winning big with small is the shortcut to riches. Anyway, I won't die if I lose. Countless people in the audience began to discuss when 1E and Liu Ran entered the arena. Clearly, in the round-robin competition for the top 10 contestants, there were corresponding odds for each match. Chun Hao and the other disciples of the 100 Empire ranking were shocked when they heard the discussions. The wealth of the cultivation world was, of course, even more shocking was the wealth of the Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce. This was a martial arts arena with hundreds of thousands of people. How many people had bet? Even if each person bet 1,000 pills, how much would that be? How much wealth would one need to afford such a bet? Boom! Boom! Following the referee's words, 1E and Liu Ran's aura soared crazily at the same time. Ah, what? What is this? Almost in an instant, before the two had even started fighting, they had only activated their protective auras and raised their battle intent, which caused the entire martial arts practice field to erupt into cries of surprise. Numerous gazes were instantly locked onto Liu Ran's figure. Divine Beast Black Tortoise? Requesting monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 183. First update. Requesting for monthly votes. Recommendation votes. Dark Mountain is going all out. The promise is still there, but our monthly votes, today, we only have a pitiful 2 votes. An enormous image was faintly discernible as it enveloped Liu Ran's body. If that wasn't the appearance of the Divine Beast Black Tortoise, what else could it be? It really is the Divine Beast's inheritance. Fuck, what a loss. Haha, we've struck it rich. Following the exclamations of the several 100,000 spectators in the martial practice field, the elders of the 50 different sects on the viewing platform also revealed expressions of excitement. This was especially true for the elders of the 3 rank 7 sections. The gazes with which they looked at Liu Ran already revealed an aura of absolute certainty. Last night, the enormous commotion caused by the appearance of the Divine Beast Azure Dragon's inheritance had already confirmed the rumors. It was even more conclusive that Chun Hao and Tantai Lian had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. And now, Liu Ran had obtained the divine beast Black Tortoise's inheritance with their own eyes. What did this mean? It meant that it was very possible that the inheritances of the strongest divine beasts of the divine martial empire would all appear. No wonder the auras of the 100 Empire Rankings disciples this time around were much stronger than the previous tens of years. This time around, the divine martial remnant has indeed opened the most valuable area. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that we won't have a share of the disciples that obtain the divine beast's inheritance. However, it's still pretty good. No matter what, the disciples that will obtain this time around are all stronger than before. The elders on the viewing platform were also spiritedly discussing. Humph, the inheritance of the divine beast Black Tortoise. You want to defeat me with just this? You're nothing more than a coward. Watch as I shatter your turtle shell. Go to hell. Collapsing sword slash. On the stage, one E, who originally had absolute confidence in his victory, was currently not afraid in the slightest despite being shocked. The aura on his body immediately soared crazily once again. His mouth was still as majestic as before. No matter what, he was still a rank 9 martial emperor, an expert ranked 11th on the pagoda stele. How could he possibly be frightened by the divine beast's inheritance? Boom! Just as he finished speaking, Wani took a step forward. Surging origin power whizzed up. In an instant, it condensed into incomparably valiant sword light. It shone with a resplendent, breathtaking luster and a frightening, sharp aura. With a hiss, it was as if 10,000 rays of light shot out from the spiritual sword in his hand. Every ray of sword light contained a frightening amount of energy. It was enough to kill a 7th-level martial grandmaster expert. Such a frightening amount of power caused the entire audience in the martial arts practice field to be shocked, especially the few contestants in the same group as 1E. They were even more terrified. Ranked 11th on the Black Pagoda Monument, the second ranked expert of the group, he was indeed not someone they could contend against. Xian Wu change. Liu Ran, who seemed to be shrouded in a tortoise shell, had a gloomy and disdainful expression on his face as he stared at the terrifying sword light that was rapidly approaching him. Black Tortoise Transformation. As the word change came out of his mouth, the phantom of the divine beast Black Tortoise that shrouded him suddenly shrank several times, like a layer of protective gang chi that clung to his body. It emitted an extremely cold aura, and his whole body was shrouded in a mysterious, icy blue color. Pung 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 pung. At the same time, dense explosive sounds were emitted from under Liu Ran's feet. His whole body actually welcomed Wan Yi's attack with his bare hands. Both of his feet tapped on the ground, and wherever he passed, a series of deep pits appeared. His speed became faster and faster, and the entire arena that was shrouded in a barrier began to tremble violently. The terrifying sword light was as fast as lightning, and the moment it was about to collide with Liu Ran, roar! Liu Ran was like an ancient fierce beast, and he let out a violent roar. Above his head, there was a faint phantom of the Black Tortoise stretching its neck. In an instant, the icy blue light on his body became more and more condensed. With a bang, his whole body fiercely collided with the sword light. Rumble! A terrifying explosion of energy spread out from the incomparably huge arena, causing the entire martial arts practice field to tremble violently. Some of the spectators with low cultivations actually jumped out of their seats in fright, screaming in fear. The might of the Black Tortoise, is it something that you can resist? Die! When they saw the scene on the arena again, what shocked everyone was that Liu Ran actually broke through the layers of sword light. Accompanied by a cold and arrogant voice, he threw out a punch. The veins on Wan Yi's face twitched, and he suddenly let out a roar. He gathered all of his cultivation and stabbed out with his sword. Clang! Rumble! The tip of the sword and the fist collided, and there was a burst of dazzling sparks and the sound of metal clashing. With a loud explosion, 1E, who originally thought that he would win, was directly sent flying. He spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Although he was endlessly unwilling, When he sensed Liu Ran's rapidly approaching figure, he did not dare to have any hesitation. He fearfully shouted, "I admit defeat." As expected of the divine beast Black Tortoise, its defensive ability is actually so strong. The elders on the rostrum all exclaimed in admiration. However, the entire arena was in a state of shock. They were still immersed in the shock brought by Liu Ran. He hasn't even completed the first step of fusion, and he's still a 9th grade martial great master. He's no match for me. On the contestants' seating area, a youth restrained his aura. He had a relaxed expression on his face as he stared at Liu Ran, who was flying towards the contestants' seating area. Don't be careless. The Black Tortoise's defense is the strongest among us. He hasn't completed the first step of fusion. Who knows if he'll have completed it when we meet. Moreover, he'll also borrow the energy from the fusion to break through to the martial saint realm. So what? I'm not just a martial saint. I'm a martial saint who has comprehended the operation of the 5 elements. What's more, my ranking is much higher than his by a large margin. Don't worry, when I easily destroy that worthless inheritance, you'll know how strong I am. The youth confidently said to the divine beast Azure Dragon in his body. As he spoke, his gaze was filled with provocation and disdain as he looked at Chun Hao, who was not far away. However, Chun Hao's gaze was only fixed on Liu Ran, who had just walked down from the arena. He did not seem to care about the gaze that was looking at him. In the past 2 days, Chun Hao had already gotten used to being stared at by others, even though he was only the 10th and last seated contestant. However, he and Lung Yihan were the most eye-catching existences. Before the experiential training, they were both only rank 8 martial emperors. However, at this moment, they had obtained the qualifications to become seated contestants among over 3,000 disciples. The only gaze that Chun Hao cared about was one of them. It was a sinister gaze that had practically never left him after he appeared. That gaze was very powerful. It was so powerful that just by looking at it, Chun Hao felt that it was an existence that he could not resist. Chun Hao knew who it was. Even without Dongfang Ting and Xian Xian's voice transmissions, he knew who it was. It was the super genius disciple of the Imperial Sword School, Fan Fong. He was an abnormal existence who had advanced from martial great master to Golden Core realm in 2 years. The entire Imperial Sword School valued him greatly. He was a disciple whose name shook the entire cultivation world. Although Chun Hao was confident, at this moment, he was not foolish enough to confront him head-on. However, he was not afraid. He would still do what he had to do. Furthermore, he believed that even without the protection of the sect, he had an 80% chance of escaping from his opponent. Following that, the second group, the third group, and so on, the first and second group's contestants all stepped onto the arena. The strength and battle power they displayed were also powerful and brilliant. However, they could not be compared to Liu Ran, who had obtained the divine beast's inheritance. When the first and second group's contestants of the 7th group stepped onto the arena, the entire martial practice field exploded. Even the experts on the platform were no exception. The divine beast Vermilion Bird's inheritance had appeared. The young girl ranked 137th on the Black Pagoda Steel, Chu Liqin, used the power of the divine beast Vermilion Bird's inheritance to turn the entire main arena into a sea of flames. She burned the 47th ranked contestant half to death. If he had not admitted defeat in time, he would have lost his life. For the first match of the 10th group, number 1 Zhong Yandong and number 2 Tantai Lien, please step onto the arena. Voila! Following the referee's announcement, the entire martial practice field exploded into an uproar. Zhong Yandong was ranked 40 on the Black Pagoda Steel, while Tantai Lien was ranked 30. However, no one thought that Zhong Yandong would definitely win this match. This was because the rumor that Chun Hao and Tantai Lien had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance was the earliest to appear and the most conclusive. The reason why it was so sensational was because Tantai Lien was also one of the most dazzling existences. She, who'd been ranked last on the Black Pagoda Steel, was now ranked 30. Furthermore, She had obtained the divine beast's inheritance. Even though it was the most useless phoenix's inheritance among the 6 divine beasts, it was still a divine beast's inheritance. No one dared to underestimate it. When Tantai Lien took a deep breath and stood up, Chun Hao said softly, "Victory or defeat is not important. Just be careful. I will definitely win." Hiss! Tantai Lien transformed into a stream of light and flew onto the arena. She was dressed in a long pink robe. Her aura was pure and untainted. Just like her name, she was like a blooming lotus flower. But compared to her past self, at this moment, although she was only a willing one, her entire body was filled with a powerful aura. She was no longer as weak and delicate as before. She, who had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance and refined her body with a nirvana flame, was stronger than an ordinary 9th-grade martial grandmaster. Why are all of you so stubborn? Looking at the expression on Tantai Lien's face, Chun Hao shrugged helplessly. Beauty is also taken. The Phoenix's inheritance requires the union of yin and yang. She is already Chun Hao's woman. I'm so envious. The 2 of them must have entered the same sect. They have the Phoenix's inheritance. Furthermore, one of them is a martial artist, and one of them is a martial artist. Such a couple is simply a perfect match. I seem to be witnessing the birth of a pair of immortal couples. You probably don't know who Chun Hao offended, right? Fan Fong, the super genius of the Flying Sword faction, Fan Fong. Look at where the disciples of the Flying Sword faction are. It is said that Chun Hao killed Fan Fong's most beloved sister during his training. Immortal couples. I'm afraid it will be difficult. Fan Fong has only entered the sect for 2 years and is already an inner disciple. Furthermore, he has the battle power to challenge core disciples. Such a super genius, the inheritance of a divine beast, is really nothing. The buzzing of discussion came from the martial arts practice field. Obviously, there was no such thing as an airtight wall. The conflict between Chun Hao and Fan Fong had already spread. The others only treated it as a topic of conversation. However, Chun Hao's ears twitched. When he heard these words, his handsome face revealed an incomparable struggle. Who the hell said that the Phoenix's inheritance requires the union of yin and yang? Isn't this ruining little Lien's reputation? Friends who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Continue to write the second update. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 184. Note, brothers and sisters who still have monthly votes, please support Dark Mountain. Thank you. Damn it. Chun Hao couldn't help but curse in a low voice. What's wrong? Li Yifeng immediately asked. Yang Fan and Ni Giant Pain also looked at Chun Hao. After 6 months of being together, the 3 of them understood Chun Hao quite well. No matter what he encountered, he was calm, experienced, and wise. They couldn't compare to him at all. It was as if even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, he could still remain calm and composed. But why was he cursing at this time? Chun Hao frowned slightly as he looked at the 3 of them. He seemed to be very conflicted. When the 3 of them were a little scared, he finally asked, Do you also think that after receiving the Phoenix's legacy, little Lien and I have already intercourse? Cough, cough. Li Yifeng and the other 2 immediately coughed twice. Yang Fan and Ni Giant Pain immediately turned their heads. Li Yifeng, who was next to Chun Hao, couldn't avoid it in time. He could only look at Chun Hao and say, this although we didn't receive the Phoenix's legacy, but the records of the Divine Beast legacies still say it very clearly. Could it be that you and little Lien haven't done it? Damn it. Of course not. Chun Hao shook off Li Yifeng's arm and couldn't help but curse again. He said gloomily. Obviously, even Li Yifeng and the other 2 thought that Chun Hao and Tantai Lien had already intercourse. It was also because of this that the 3 of them didn't interrupt the subtle relationship between Tantai Lien and Chun Hao during this period of time. This was because they truly couldn't sense any desire to possess Tantai Lien from Chun Hao. In fact, it was no different from when he hadn't obtained the Phoenix's inheritance. They couldn't understand, so they didn't interfere. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying explosions in the arena and the cries of surprise from the audience made Chun Hao temporarily put down the gloominess in his heart and look at Tantai Lien, who had already started fighting. Zhong Yandong was very cautious, but he was completely suppressed by Tantai Lien. Tantai Lien was very wild. Her powerful mental strength fused with the majestic and terrifying pure yang energy. Under her control, it transformed into terrifying sword beams. Furthermore, under her powerful control, it sealed off any possibility of Zhong Yandong dodging or fighting. She floated in the air. Her eyes were sharp and her face was cold. As she attacked, she approached Zhong Yandong at a steady pace, but it was filled with menace. She had not even unleashed the power of the Phoenix's inheritance, but she had already gained the absolute advantage. This was what was truly shocking. When Tantai Lien was only 30 meters away from Zhong Yandong was forced to admit defeat due to Tantai Lien's terrifying strength. This was because he really could not be sure if he would be able to survive when the other party unleashed the power of the inheritance. Under countless gazes and exclamations, Tantai Lien flew back to Chun Hao and sat down in silence. She saw Chun Hao's straight and somewhat strange gaze, but she had no choice but to avoid it. Ever since that night, she tried her best not to look or think about it. This was because she was afraid that she would lose even her most basic dignity and modesty. She was afraid that she would fall into those deep black eyes. Chun Hao wanted to say something, but he realized that he was not good with words, especially when facing a woman. At this moment, he was even more speechless. What should he say? Of course, Chun Hao knew, and so did Tantai Lien. Everyone else thought that the two of them had intercourse. Although the two of them really did not for a girl, this kind of thing was too hurtful. Tantai Lien, I, Fan Fong, will let you die a good death. I will let Chun Hao watch as you die. From afar, Fan Fong's vicious eyes flashed with a strange and evil light. He stared at Tantai Lien, who had flown back to the contestant seating area, and thought to himself. When he saw the scene of Fan Yin's death and the seal of life and death, Chun Hao was the main culprit who killed Fan Yin, and Tantai Lien was an accomplice. Chun Hao had to die, and so did Tantai Lien. However, staring at Tantai Lien's beautiful figure, Fan Fong, who had already lost his beloved sister, had a twisted mind that could better vent the hatred in his heart. I will let you die a good death. A good death. Under the extreme perverted excitement, Fan Fong's face flashed with an evil aura, and he could not help but murmur to himself. Xian Xian, who was next to Fan Fong, was shocked. She frowned deeply, and her eyes imperceptibly looked at Dongfang Ting, who was closer to her. Soon, it was time for the third and fourth contestants of each group to take the stage. In these 10 matches, no more inherited divine beasts appeared. There were 2 matches that were the most outstanding. One was Lung Yihan of Group 3. He, who was ranked 3rd on the Pagoda Monument, killed the disciple ranked 43rd in one move. This was the only battle after the top 20 where he killed an opponent. Chun Hao was shocked to the core, especially the style of Lung Yihan's sword. It was really breathtaking. Moreover, what shocked Chun Hao even more was that the aura that this guy released in an instant had actually advanced to 9th grade martial ancestor. When Lung Yihan had talked to Chun Hao, he had casually said that he wanted to break through a little. At that time, Chun Hao had not thought much of it, thinking that Lung Yihan must have reached the peak of 6th grade martial ancestor and could break through the barrier at any time. That was why he had said that. However, in less than 2 days, the little he said had actually advanced by 3 grades. This was simply inconceivable. What a monstrous existence. At least, Chun Hao did not think that he could do it. Even if he did not have any barriers, how could he advance by 3 grades in 2 days if he started to crazily refine his origin energy? Other than Lung Yihan, which shocked Chun Hao, there was another battle that made Chun Hao feel a trace of threat. In fact, not only did Chun Hao feel threatened, but all the disciples in the top 10 felt a huge threat especially those who were sure that they would be able to advance. Even more so, Group 10, Number 4, Kong Ling Hong. Kong Ling Hong, ranked 20th on the Black Pagoda Monument, was ranked second in Chun Hao's group, second only to Chun Hao. He, who had drawn Number 4, had decisively surrendered the moment he appeared on the stage. The seven-colored light shrouded him, dazzling him. That was the symbol of stepping into the martial saint realm. Who dared to fight him? Just based on the realm alone, Kong Ling Hong had directly risen to the level of the most powerful contender for the championship. Moreover, some people had vaguely guessed something. Although Kong Ling Hong did not reveal any aura of the divine beast inheritance, the dragon roar that came from the mountain last night made the cultivators who lived near the mountain and knew that Kong Ling Hong and the others lived on the mountain suspect that Kong Ling Hong was the one who inherited the divine beast azure dragon. Kong Ling Hong, who had a complacent, arrogant, and proud expression, flew slowly in the air as he returned to the contestants' seating area, enjoying the glory of being the center of attention. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he looked provocatively at Chun Hao and Tantai Lien, who were sitting together before returning to his seat. Martial Saint, Tantai Lien frowned deeply and could not help but look at Chun Hao. Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Jian Pain also looked at Chun Hao. Chun Hao did not look at the four of them. Instead, he stared in the direction of the arena with a cold expression. Chun Hao, did you hear the discussion of those disciples over there? This Kong Ling Hong is very likely the one who inherited the divine beast azure dragon. Otherwise, how could he, who was originally a 9th grade martial ancestor, become a martial saint so quickly? He must have used the power of the inheritance to break through. Look at his complacent expression. It's obvious that he doesn't take you seriously. Li Yifeng said, martial ancestor and martial saint are only one step apart, but they are the acquired realm and the connate realm. This gap is not something a martial emperor and martial ancestor can compare to. Chun Hao, as a brother, whether you want to hear it or not, I, Yang Fan, still have to say it. It's not that easy to be in the top 3. Furthermore, Fan Fong wants to kill you. Without the protection of a sect, I really don't know how you can escape. If it's possible, choose a sect. Let's all choose a sect. If you and Little Lien work together, you can also unleash the power of the Phoenix's inheritance. As long as you stay in the sect for a few years, I believe that no matter how talented Fan Fong is, he won't be able to threaten you. I think so too. And I, Giant Pain, also said. Tantai Lien did not speak, but she looked at Chun Hao. Without a doubt, this was what she had been looking forward to the most. However, because of the girl that Chun Hao had mentioned, she had forcibly suppressed this anticipation. We'll see. Chun Hao took a deep breath and said ambiguously. One only needed to imagine the power of the Azure Dragon's inheritance when he and Tantai Lien worked together to make a guess. Furthermore, although he had not truly merged his yin and yang with Tantai Lien, he had completed the first step of merging. As for the second step, he had never thought of completing it. Furthermore, even if he completed it with the help of the mysterious existence in his mind, so what? Without the true merging of yin and yang, the Phoenix's inheritance was of little value. It could not be merged into one body. Furthermore, he had never thought of using the Phoenix's inheritance to rush into the top 3. Looking at Chun Hao's sharp and determined gaze, Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other 3 knew that their persuasion had no effect. Amidst the shock and discussion of the crowd, the duel between number 5 and number 6 began again. Number 6 in the first group, Gao Jianfei, his opponent admitted defeat and won. Number 5 in the second group, Lu Feiyu, who was ranked 12th on the Black Pagoda tablet, displayed a powerful combat strength and defeated his opponent ranked 22nd in a minute. Number 5 and 6 in the third group had mediocre performances. Number 6 won. When it came to the fourth group, the highly anticipated divine beast's inheritance appeared again. This made the low-level disciples who participated in the Shenwu Ruins experience very depressed. Up until now, no one had heard of any sect disciple obtaining the divine beast's inheritance during the experience. Now, the divine beast Qilin's inheritance appeared again. The expert ranked 34th on the Black Pagoda tablet, number 5 in the 4th group, Ao Huaguang. His tower-like, majestic body caused a commotion the moment he appeared. His bulging muscles were like those of an ancient ferocious beast that contained a terrifying and explosive power. Around him, the enormous and majestic body of the Chilean god beast was faintly flashing. This aura made the expert ranked 14th on the Black Pagoda tablet, who was full of confidence, choose to admit defeat unwillingly. The combat strength between 14 and 34 was equal. How could he defeat the lucky one who obtained the divine beast's inheritance? Requesting monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Continue to add the 3rd update. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to Conceited. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 185. 3rd update. Looking for monthly votes and recommendation votes. Thank you. Chapter 180. Decision, Awakening, Group 10, number 7 Murong Bai, and number 8 Chun Hao. Please come on stage. The referee's voice sounded, and Chun Hao immediately flew to the arena. From the 4th group's 5th contestant, Ao Huaguang, to the 5th and 6th contestants, and then from the 1st group's 7th and 8th contestants, all the way to the 10th group's Murong Bai and Chun Hao's contestants, there were no exciting performances. Only a few seeded contestants showed their powerful strength. The divine beast White Tiger's inheritance that everyone was looking forward to had not appeared yet. It was the only divine beast inheritance that had not appeared yet. Murong Bai was ranked 110 on the Black Pagoda. Facing Chun Hao, a seeded contestant who had obtained the Phoenix inheritance, plus the rumors about Chun Hao, he did not have the courage to enter the arena and chose to admit defeat. Chun Hao ran back and forth in despair. He could only sigh that his opponents were too weak. Until now, he and the other 3 seeded contestants still had not had a chance to fight. The competition continued. In Group 3, number 9 Yang Fan, although he had comprehended the essence of wind, he was still seriously injured by number 10 Zheng Yuanpeng, a 9th-grade martial grandmaster who was ranked 13 on the Black Pagoda. Yang Fan's surprise attack was absolutely terrifying, but the confident Zheng Yuanpeng used his great strength to counterattack when Yang Fan's sword was about to reach him. When it was time for number 9 and 10 of Group 5 to enter the arena, number 10 contestant Yu Qiyu, a female disciple with an enchanting appearance and a seductive figure, did not show great strength at the beginning. However, when she was completely suppressed by her opponent and was about to be defeated, her aura suddenly soared crazily. The divine beast White Tiger inheritance had finally appeared. She killed her shocking opponent in one move. In one day, after 2 rounds of competition, Chun Hao still did not have a chance to fight. However, the real strong contestants had already shown their talents. The most outstanding contestant was undoubtedly Kong Ling Hong, who was a martial saint in Group 10 and had a high chance of obtaining the Azure Dragon inheritance. Then there was Li Yuran in Group 1 with the Black Tortoise inheritance, Ao Huaguang in Group 4 with the Kylan inheritance, Yu Qiyu in Group 5 with the White Tiger inheritance, and Chu Liqin in Group 7 with the Vermilion Bird inheritance. In addition to these 5 contestants who had revealed the Divine Beast inheritance, there were also several powerful contestants who entered the public's eyes. Chun Hao. Just as Chun Hao and the rest stepped out of the training ground, Dong Fong Ting's figure appeared beside Chun Hao and said, "Let me join you tonight. Senior sister is coming with us?" Chun Hao asked in surprise. "It's a sect mission. I was sent here as a lobbyist to deal with the elders. You don't have to worry about it. Water flows downwards and people walk upwards. I will not affect you," Dong Fong Ting said with a faint smile. Although there was nothing wrong with her expression, there was a hint of worry hidden deep within her eyes. That was especially true when she looked at Chun Hao and Tan Tai Lien. Chun Hao's intuition told him that Dong Fong Ting was not simply here to persuade the elders. In less than 10 minutes, Chun Hao and the other 4, led by Dong Fong Ting, returned to the courtyard on the peak. As expected, after entering the courtyard, Dongfang Ting called for Chun Hao and the rest to enter the cultivation room together. "Senior sister, what's the matter?" Chun Hao asked with a frown after entering the cultivation room. "During the competition, I received a message from Xian Xian. She asked me to ask about the specific situation when you killed Fan Fong's sister." "The specific situation? I just killed her with a punch. What's wrong?" "Not that. Fan Fong had formed the seal of life and death with his sister. When she dies, Fan Fong can see the scene of his sister's death through the seal of life and death. Xin Xin said that Fan Fong said today that he wanted all of you to die, and it's very likely that he would do something even worse to Xiaoyan. And according to what Tai Zigong said, Fan Fong might not let any of you off." Tantai Lien, Li Yifeng, Yang Fan, and Ni Jianping's expressions changed slightly as they looked at Chun Hao. Then, Tantai Lien said, "I'm not afraid. At most, I'll cultivate in the sect. No matter how strong he is, would he dare to attack the sect? It's just that." Tantai Lien looked at Chun Hao and did not continue. Yang Fan and the other two did the same. Chun Hao's brows were deeply furrowed. His black eyes were unusually cold. He did not speak, as if he was deep in thought. "His target is the Dragon Transformation List." Tantai Lien could not help but send a message to Dongfang Ting. "What?" Dongfang Ting's eyes widened in shock. She grabbed Chun Hao and said, "What are you thinking? Without the sect's protection, with Fan Fong's cultivation, how could you hide? If I'm not wrong, he is already locked onto your aura. Fan Fong may be in the golden core stage, but he can even form the seal of life and death. Do you know what this means? If you insist on doing things your own way, you'll only get yourself killed. The only way is to choose a sect and concentrate on cultivation. When you've truly grown and are strong enough to fight him, you won't have to hide anymore. Can't you even tolerate this?" Chun Hao looked at Dongfang Ting in shock. Ever since they met, Dongfang Ting had never lost her temper. But now, the Dragon Transformation List is indeed of a higher level than the 100 Empire ranking. But don't think that your talent is so great that you can stand out on the Dragon Transformation List. Those disciples are all super geniuses from big clans in the cultivation world. If you don't join a sect now, you're like a wandering cultivator without roots. Your cultivation conditions are 100 times worse than those of sect disciples, and you're suppressed everywhere. How fast can you improve? In 2 years, even if you're lucky enough to escape Fan Fong's pursuit, how much can you improve? 6th grade Martial Saint is the minimum requirement to register for the Dragon Transformation List. There are plenty of martial gods, and Golden Core Stage is not rare. These are all geniuses below the age of 20. Disciples from our dynasty can't compare to them at all. I don't know why you insist on participating in the Dragon Transformation List, but this time, you must. I'll listen to you." Chun Hao suddenly said, "Senior sister, can you let go my shoulder? If you continue to hold on, my bones will be crushed by your grip." Dongfang Ting was slightly taken aback by Chun Hao's words. She immediately released Chun Hao's shoulder and asked, "Are you serious?" Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three looked at Chun Hao in shock. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief. This was a bull, a stubborn guy to the point of madness. Although Tantai Lien couldn't help but tell Dongfang Ting, the four of them didn't have much hope. But now, Chun Hao had actually agreed. "Really? Senior sister, does your sect have the strength to protect us?" "Our sect? Yes," Chun Hao said with a serious expression. "Our sect is only of 3rd grade. It doesn't matter what grade you are. I only want to know if your sect has the ability to let us stay in the sect. That's not a problem. Even if it's a 1st grade sect, as long as you're in the sect, no one would dare to do anything to you. Even the sect leader of the Flying Sword sect doesn't have this ability, but we're only of 3rd grade. Chun Hao, you don't have to worry about your relationship with me. My sword will let you choose the 7th grade sect, the Myriad Pill Pavilion." Hearing Dongfang Ting's words, Tantai Lien and the other three looked at Chun Hao. Their expressions were obviously more inclined towards the Myriad Pill Pavilion that Dongfang Ting had mentioned. I'd rather be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix, Chunhao said with a slight smile. Then why do you insist on participating in the dragon transformation list? Dongfang Ting couldn't help but ask. For one thing, it's to vent my anger. Secondly, I never wanted to join any sect. I want to be a freelance cultivator. A freelance cultivator with no restrictions. Chunhao said. A freelance cultivator? Are you crazy? A freelance cultivator can't even obtain a decent cultivation technique. What are you cultivating? This. I don't think it's very important. Chunhao seemed to say reluctantly. In the eyes of Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lien, and the other four, he seemed to have completely ignored them. In reality, what they didn't know was that the reason Chunhao wanted to be a freelance cultivator without any restrictions was because of the secrets of the Taoist canon in his mind. Once he stepped into the golden elixir stage, he would truly begin his own cultivation. How would he lack cultivation techniques? He believed that combining Taoist techniques and martial arts techniques would allow his strength to increase rapidly. Besides this, there was another reason that attracted Chunhao to be a freelance cultivator. That was because he didn't have to shoulder any responsibilities or concerns. But this time, the news that Dongfang Ting brought and the words that she had just said made Chunhao understand that it was impossible for people to be free of responsibilities. In the past, he was able to do that because, strictly speaking, he was a person who had completely sealed himself off and refused to accept anyone. Could the current him do that? No. But now it seems impossible. All right, senior sister, I'll choose your Zhaixing sect. What about you? If you think my level is too low, you're free too. Chunhao suddenly seemed to become a different person as he looked at Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three. Although he said they were free to choose, the expression on his face clearly said that if they dared to do as they pleased, he would cut ties with them. So what if I'm third level? Didn't you say that? The level isn't important. What's important is whether it suits me. I've long felt that the Zhaixing sect suits me. Of course, I'm fine with it. That's what I thought too, Yang Fan said with a smile on his ordinary face. You've spoken my mind. And I, Giant Pain, who was as solemn as a mountain, actually grinned and said. Tantai Lien only nodded, her face slightly red. This. Dongfang Ting was a little surprised and didn't know what to say. The so-called lobbyist was indeed real. Elder Wu meant for her to fight for Li Yifeng and Ni Giant Pain, the two weakest. As for Yang Fan, who had rushed into the top 10, there was no hope. Not to mention Shun, Hao, and Tantai Lien. But at this moment, they seemed to have 1-6 at once. How great was this credit? But you're really choosing the Zhaixing sect? Are you sure you're not being impulsive? I'm sure. Senior sister, look at how happy you are. Is the reward very great? Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three were once again surprised that Chunhao actually joked. Very great. If it's true, it's really great, then remember to share some benefits with us. Don't doubt whether it's true or not. The Zhaixing sect, what a domineering name. I didn't think much of it first, but the more I think about it, the more it fits, Chunhao said with a smile. At this moment, Tantai Lien and the other three suddenly wondered if the person in front of them was the original Chunhao. Yes and no. Even Chunhao himself didn't expect that after making this decision, his entire soul seemed to have undergone a baptism, as if the dark clouds had parted to reveal the sun and moon. He made this decision for the sake of Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Giant Pain. This also made him understand that the determination in his heart, the strong desire to become stronger, had sunk into the obsession of his former self. But unfortunately, he was no longer the person he used to be, and he couldn't be heartless at all. Fortunately, he chose to join a sect for the sake of the four of them. Even more fortunately, after making this choice, he understood that he had sunk into obsession. But now he was clear-headed, begging for monthly votes. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 186. 2 days later. The competition for the top 10 had been going on for 3 days. Every contestant had completed 6 matches. Among the groups with divine beast inheritances, other than the 10th seeded contestant, Chen Hao, who had yet to meet the martial sage, Kong Ling Hong, who had obtained the Azure Dragon's inheritance, the other 4 groups had all fought against the seeded contestants. In the first group, Liu Ran, who had obtained the Black Tortoise's inheritance, met the first-ranked Gao Jianfei. To everyone's surprise, they ended in a draw. In the fourth group, Ao Huaguang, who had obtained the Kailan's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Yuan Hao. In the fifth group, Yu Qiu, who had obtained the White Tiger's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Ren Yujian. In the seventh group, Chu Liqin, who had obtained the Vermilion Bird's inheritance, defeated the seeded contestant, Xin Yuan Hong. Other than Liu Ran, Ao Huaguang, Yu Qiu, and Chu Liqin had all advanced to the martial sage realm. So far, for martial sages had appeared in the 100 Empire ranking. Furthermore, everyone knew that the 5th martial sage would be born very soon. That was Liu Ran. It was obvious that Liu Ran had not completed the first step of merging with the Black Tortoise. Otherwise, he would have advanced to the martial sage realm like the other 4. As for Chun Hao and Tantai Lian, who had obtained the Phoenix's inheritance, no one could be sure. After all, compared to the 5 divine beasts, the Phoenix was of little value. Tantai Lian, who had also obtained the Phoenix's inheritance, had already admitted defeat when she met Kong Ling Hong. Today, the most anticipated match was between Chun Hao and Kong Ling Hong. In the 10th group, number 4 Kong Ling Hong and number 8 Chun Hao, please enter the stage. Crash. Following the referee's announcement, the highly anticipated match was finally about to begin. Instantly, everyone looked at Chun Hao. Yes, they were looking at Chun Hao, because no one could be sure whether Chun Hao would fight or not. Whoosh! Chun Hao did not give the crowd too much time to wait. When Kong Ling Hong flew into the arena, he turned into a ray of light and landed on the arena. Lung Yihan, who had always been lazy, suddenly twitched his mouth. A small dimple appeared on his face. Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lian, and the rest were slightly nervous. Even Xian Xian was no exception. Fan Fong was also a little nervous, but he wasn't nervous about the outcome of the battle between Chun Hao and Kong Ling Hong. Instead, he was worried that Chun Hao would die at the hands of Kong Ling Hong. That would be too easy for Chun Hao. On the huge arena, Chun Hao's figure was as straight as a sword. Facing Kong Ling Hong, whose body was faintly flashing with 7-colored light, his face was calm, and no emotions could be seen at all. Only a pair of deep black eyes were shining faintly. I've finally encountered a battle that makes me somewhat excited. Chun Hao, come, I'll let you experience the power of a martial saint. When the referee announced the start of the match, Kong Ling Hong unhurriedly activated his 7-colored protective aura and said lightly. His expression was lazy and his tone was arrogant. It was obvious that he didn't see Chun Hao as an opponent, especially when it was said out loud. Only the strength of a martial saint. I advise you to use the power of the Azure Dragon inheritance, or you'll die a miserable death. Chun Hao's expression was still calm. His clear, but even more arrogant voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. At this moment, Chun Hao's aura suddenly soared. His body actually began to shine with a faint 7-colored light, circulating the 5 elements, and the aura of yin and yang of heaven and earth, instantly spreading out. Bang! What shocked Lung Yihan, Dongfang Ting, Tantai Lian, and all those familiar with Chun Hao was that at this moment, Chun Hao actually made his move, brazenly charging at his opponent and attacking. How could this be? Didn't he know how to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses? This guy, what is he doing? Lung Yihan frowned. Even if Lung Yihan wanted to fight, he wouldn't dare to choose this method because of the difference in cultivation level and the difference in inherited divine beasts. Only by integrating with all things in the world and relying on the power of the wind attribute's true essence would Chun Hao have a better chance of winning. What was the difference between fighting head-on like this and seeking death? You're not qualified. I'd like to see who will die miserably. Before everyone's gazes, Kong Ling Hong stared at Chun Hao, who was rushing over like lightning. He was not in a hurry, and as he spoke, his body moved. Enveloped by the seven-colored light, he rose into the air. His expression became cold and disdainful, emitting a strong, bone-chilling, killing intent. It was true killing intent. In reality, Kong Ling Hong had never looked down on Chun Hao. Even though he was confident that he could easily defeat Chun Hao, he did not dare to look down on him. Chun Hao was only a rank 8 martial emperor before he started his training. In a short 9 months, he was able to distinguish himself among the geniuses of the 100 Empire ranking and stand on the highest stage as a seed. Who would dare to look down on him? Furthermore, Kong Ling Hong was certain that the sect's elders wanted Chun Hao much more than the disciples who obtained the inheritance of divine beasts and became martial saints. That was because Chun Hao's age, talent, battle power, and the aura of the 5 elements and yin and yang of heaven and earth on his body were not something that the inherited divine beast could compare with. With an additional competitor, there would be a decrease in importance, especially if they both chose the same sect. His radiance would be somewhat overshadowed by Chun Hao. Thus, as long as Chun Hao dared to accept his challenge, he would think of a way to kill him. Directly revealing the power of inheritance was clearly not suitable. Otherwise, if he were to directly admit defeat, the gains would not make up for the losses. Furthermore, he believed that merely by relying on the disparity between a martial saint and a martial ancestor realm, he would be able to kill Chun Hao. Boom! After Kong Ling Hong spat out the word miserable, a resplendent 7-colored pillar of energy suddenly condensed in his palm. Frightening energy fluctuations immediately spread out. In an instant, they condensed into a resplendent pillar of energy that ruthlessly shot toward the incoming Chun Hao. Kong Ling Hong's frightening attack was as fast as lightning. Merely the energy fluctuations it emitted were sufficient to explode any martial ancestor realm expert. As soon as he attacked, Kong Ling Hong displayed the true power of a martial saint. Countless people in the spectator seats were shocked. With such power, how could Chun Hao, who was only at the martial ancestor realm, resist? Everyone's gazes were filled with shock, curiosity, and pity as they gathered on Chun Hao. No one had thought that Chun Hao would stupidly choose such a head-on attack. However, in the face of Kong Ling Hong's swift and fierce attack, Chun Hao's expression did not change in the slightest. He did not have any intention of dodging. His wildly dashing figure suddenly froze. His right palm drew an arc in front of him at lightning speed and crossed his waist. Then, he exploded with a loud roar that reverberated through the heavens and earth as he violently struck out with his palm. Roar, roar. The moment Chun Hao's palm struck out, the violent yuan power within a radius of several hundred feet instantly seemed to have been sucked away. What was even more shocking was that in an instant, Chun Hao's palm actually spat out a total of 18 energy shadows that resembled divine dragons. They spiraled and danced as they whizzed out. The whizzing sound was like the roars of 18 huge dragons exploding at the same time. The momentum was extremely shocking. Rumble. Chun Hao's palm landed solidly on the oncoming light pillar. In an instant, accompanied by a frightening explosion, a strong wind that could collapse mountains and split the earth frantically swept out. The huge main arena and even the entire martial arts practice field trembled at this moment. Break! 18 huge dragons that contained the circulation of the 5 elements and the yin and yang of heaven and earth seemed to have condensed into substance. They coiled around the energy light pillar that Chun Hao had sent out and extended upwards. Then, with a low roar from Chun Hao, the energy light pillar that was enough to kill a 9th-grade martial ancestor realm was actually forcefully exploded by Chun Hao's palm under the shocked gazes of the crowd. Who exactly obtained the inheritance of the Azure Dragon? In the martial arts practice field, countless people were dumbfounded and at a loss. Chun Hao, who was only a 9th-grade martial ancestor realm, was actually not at a disadvantage in his first direct confrontation. He had sent out 18 huge dragons with a palm strike. The frightening strength that he displayed caused countless people to feel that it was inconceivable. Even the eyes of the sect elders on the platform became heated. What kind of absolute skill was this? Are you qualified now? After the frightening energy storm, Chun Hao's proud and upright figure once again clearly appeared in front of the crowd. He stared at Kong Ling Hong, who was 100 feet away, and said with a cold and arrogant voice. Kong Ling Hong's pupils slowly shrank. A bone-chilling voice suddenly rang out. Since you're looking for death, I'll fulfill your wish. A strong killing intent spread out from Kong Ling Hong's body. The temperature of the martial arts practice field seemed to have instantly dropped to the freezing point. At this moment, everyone could see that Kong Ling Hong no longer dared to underestimate Chun Hao. A sparkling and resplendent green light, accompanied by a strong killing intent, flashed out from Kong Ling Hong's body at a frightening speed. Roar! At this moment, a dragon's roar resounded through the heavens and the earth. Above Kong Ling Hong's head, the phantom of a huge azure dragon that was dozens of feet long appeared. It circled around like lightning and directly merged into Kong Ling Hong's body. Kacha kacha! Accompanied by a strange sound, an extremely frightening aura suddenly soared from Kong Ling Hong's body. What shocked the crowd even more was that Kong Ling Hong's exposed skin was covered with green scales that emitted a crystal light at a frightening speed. His hands were also strangely enlarged by several times, as if they had become incomparably sharp dragon claws. Before he made a move, the crowd could clearly feel that Kong Ling Hong's body contained an explosive energy that was enough to shatter mountains and split the earth. Is this the true strength of the divine beast inheritance? Countless people looked at Kong Ling Hong in a daze and muttered. In the previous battles, other than Liu Ran, who had admitted defeat, the other three who had obtained the divine beast inheritance had already stepped into the martial saint realm. Even when they faced the seeded contestants, they did not merge with the divine beast inheritance. As martial saints, they had easily won. At this moment, under the might of Chun Hao's palm, Kong Ling Hong had no choice but to display his true strength. Go to hell. Kong Ling Hong, who had turned into a monster covered in scales, had eyes like an ancient ferocious beast, emitting a monstrous killing intent. His body shook, and suddenly, with a whoosh, his entire person seemed to have turned into a divine dragon that soared through the 9 heavens. The energy of heaven and earth churned violently as a violent and powerful aura swept through the entire, incomparably huge arena. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 187. What a powerful aura. Is this the true power of the divine beast inheritance? In the martial arts arena, countless cultivators stared at Kong Ling Hong, who seemed to have transformed into an azure dragon. They were extremely shocked, especially the disciples who still had to fight. When they felt the terrifying aura, they might not even be able to move, let alone fight. How could Chun Hao, whose aura was clearly much weaker, resist? In everyone's opinion, Chun Hao was courting death by forcing Kong Ling Hong to this extent. Chun Hao stared at Kong Ling Hong, whose aura reached the heavens, and his pupils abruptly shrank. He could feel that Kong Ling Hong's aura was at least 3 times more terrifying than before. It was not something that a simple first-grade martial saint could compare to. Even a 3rd grade or 4th grade martial saint would not have any chance of survival if they met Kong Ling Hong. It was indeed very troublesome. The power of the Azure Dragon inheritance is indeed terrifying. A trace of seriousness flashed through Chun Hao's cold expression. Azure Dragon Sky, Shattering Claw. A terrifying aura engulfed the heavens and earth. Kong Ling Hong's eyes were cold. He did not give Chun Hao too much time to think. His mutated hand stretched forward. A dragon claw that was 100 feet long directly formed above Chun Hao and slammed down. The tyrannical aura contained an incomparably terrifying energy. It was suffocating. Perhaps in the next instant, Chun Hao's thin body would be torn apart by the dragon claw. Die. Seeing that the dragon claw had completely enveloped Chun Hao, Kong Ling Hong's killing intent surged. His 5 fingers suddenly grabbed at the air. The seemingly solid dragon claw suddenly grabbed at Chun Hao, who was completely enveloped. Boom, boom, boom. The entire arena exploded around Chun Hao. 5 huge cracks appeared on the incomparably hard ground, closing in on Chun Hao from the outside. Such a terrifying, destructive power caused countless people to be dumbfounded. In your dreams, Chun Hao suddenly raised his head and felt the dragon claws that were like mountains converging towards him from all directions, and he coldly spat out 2 words. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground, and with a bang, his entire body actually rose up from the ground before smashing out with his fist. 100 steps divine fist break. Chun Hao let out a deep roar from his dantian. In an instant, the powerful fused energy was condensed to the extreme, causing Chun Hao's small body to suddenly shrink. An extremely condensed and terrifying aura rushed out from Chun Hao's fist like a meteor. Bang! Rumble! At that moment, Chun Hao's figure was completely surrounded by the dragon's claws. No one could see him. They could only hear Chun Hao's deep and angry roar. However, other than the true experts and Tantai Lien and the others who had absolute confidence in Chun Hao, almost everyone thought that Chun Hao would be destroyed by Kong Ling Hong's claw. No matter how strong a 9th-level martial grandmaster was, how strong could he be? How high could his battle prowess be? Under the encirclement of absolute power, no one could resist. However, following Chun Hao's roar, suddenly, a small fish shadow that could be ignored directly penetrated the core of the giant claw with a rumbling explosion. With an amazing speed, it directly blasted towards Kong Ling Hong, who was in the air. Such a small fish shadow actually broke through Kong Ling Hong's mountain-like dragon claw and directly penetrated it. What a condensed fist technique. It's clearly almost solid. At that moment, the experts on the rostrum all widened their eyes in shock. How could a 9th-level martial grandmaster be so strong? Lung Yihan, Meng Yi, Gao Jinfei, and the few disciples who had obtained the inheritance of the mythical beast and had the strength to compete for the championship all looked extremely shocked. Whoosh! Chun Hao did not give the crowd time to be shocked. The power of the 100 Steps Divine Fist, a unique skill of the martial arts world, under the stimulation of his own integrated energy, did not disappoint him. After breaking through the center of his opponent's terrifying dragon claw with one punch, it directly rushed out of the encirclement of the dragon claw like a cannonball and brazenly approached Kong Ling Hong, who had a shocked expression and scattered the remaining power of Chun Hao's punch. After a brief moment of shock, Kong Ling Hong's eyes flashed with a touch of anger. He snorted coldly and did not retreat at all. He took a step forward and, covered in scales, brazenly faced the attack. Bang! 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 Dense and muffled sounds of close combat immediately erupted on the stage. A human and a beast-like figure crisscrossed each other. Tens of thousands of fist shadows and claw shadows overlapped each other. The low and deep sounds of collisions did not seem like much at first. However, the area where the 2 figures passed by immediately exploded like thunder. Wave after wave of frightening energy storms caused the hearts of countless people to tremble in fear. Under the gazes of countless people, the 2 of them had already exchanged hundreds and thousands of blows in a short period of time. Chun Hao's slightly thin and small figure, in front of his opponent's monster-like figure, was actually not at a disadvantage at all. This scene not only shocked the audience in the martial arts practice field, but also the eyes of the elders on the rostrum. Their expressions were shocked. Just how strong was this Chun Hao's fleshly body? Especially at this moment, Chun Hao did not use the power of the Phoenix inheritance at all. He was completely relying on his own strength. This Chun Hao is actually so strong. This is too inconceivable. He still hasn't used the power of the Phoenix inheritance. Although it's of little value, what kind of concept would it be if he were to use it? He is only a rank 9 martial ancestor. To be able to reach the position of a seated participant as a rank 8 martial emperor, it's not strange for him to possess such battle power. The audience was dazzled by the battle. They were unable to see the movements of the two people at all. As they stared at the two figures, they began to discuss Chun Hao in shock. Dongfang Ting, Xin Xian, Tantai Lien, and the others who were familiar with Chun Hao were even more shocked, especially when they thought of how Chun Hao, in a short few years, had rapidly risen from a small county Sesame Seed clan to the 100 Empire ranking list and obtained impressive results. They were even more shocked. Bang! Bang! Right at this moment, the two figures fell to the ground at the same time. It seemed that after an intense battle, the two of them had to take a short breather. It was only at this moment that the crowd was able to clearly see the appearance of the two people. To the shock of everyone, Chun Hao's clothes were actually completely undamaged at this moment, and his extraordinarily handsome face flickered with a piercingly cold and arrogant expression. His gaze was even fierce like a sword, and his aura was still heavy. On the other hand, Kong Ling Hong, who looked like a monster, did not have much of his exposed scales. However, his clothes were already in tatters, revealing many sparkling and lustrous scales. Even though Kong Ling Hong's aura did not weaken in the slightest, nor did he show any signs of being injured, his appearance at the very least indicated that he was already at a complete disadvantage in the previous exchange. Your physical body and strength are indeed very strong. However, you are still delusional if you want to defeat me. You can't even break through my defense. Could it be that you want to compete with me, a martial saint, in terms of aura endurance? Kong Ling Hong stared gloomily at Chun Hao as he spoke through gritted teeth. Chun Hao's battle strength had indeed completely exceeded his expectations. However, that was all there was to it. This was because Chun Hao's powerful attack had only torn his clothes under the protection of the dragon scales of his green dragon transformation. It had not harmed him at all. It was absolutely impossible for Chun Hao to defeat him. A martial saint's aura was prolonged. The speed at which they devoured the energy of heaven and earth was not something that a martial ancestor could compare to. He believed that as long as the battle continued, no matter how strong Chun Hao was, he would be the first to weaken. Furthermore, with his absolute defense, he was definitely in an undefeatable position. Furthermore, he had yet to use his ultimate move. This was only the group stage. His goal was to become the champion. If he used it now, he would be exposed too early, especially when there were still 4 divine beast inheritors and martial saint experts waiting for him. Is that so? You seem to have forgotten that I have yet to use my sword. At this moment, the corners of Chun Hao's mouth curled up slightly as he spoke calmly. As he spoke, with a clang, a large sword shining with golden light appeared in his hand. The 5 elements golden sword. So what if I use my sword? Without absolute power, don't even think about breaking through my defense. Cut the crap. Take this. This. Chun Hao's voice was cold as he took a step forward. He did not activate any sword light and was still going to fight head-on. What surprised the crowd even more was that Chun Hao was clearly attacking, but his aura did not increase. Instead, it was shockingly restrained. When Lung Yihan saw this scene, his pupils shrank and his eyes widened. Is this guy crazy? Of course, Lung Yihan knew what Chun Hao was trying to do. This was because at this moment, Lung Yihan had already sensed Chun Hao's aura that had merged with all things in the world. However, this kind of attack required one to conceal oneself and launch a surprise attack when the opponent was unaware. Only then would it be effective in killing the opponent in one strike. But Chun Hao attacking head-on like this, wasn't he courting death? One had to know that merging with all things in the world and restraining one's aura meant that one had given up on one's own defense. Any random attack from the opponent could be fatal. Before Lung Yihan could recover from a shock, he suddenly realized that Chun Hao's flying figure began to drift, leaving behind a series of afterimages. He seemed to be going left, then right, then forward, then backward. He seemed to be going left, then right. He seemed to be going right, then left. What kind of movement is this? This time, It was not only Lung Yihan who widened his eyes. Countless people in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes. This kind of movement did not rely on speed. It was truly ethereal and illusory, making it impossible for people to catch a trace of it. Kong Ling Hong, who was in the situation, was even more impressed. This was because he could not lock on to Chun Hao's aura at all. He could not determine which direction Chun Hao would attack from and which part of his body he would attack from. Bang! Kong Ling Hong did not dare to think too much. This was not the time to ponder over the mysteries of the secret techniques. Although he was not afraid of Chun Hao's attack, it would be inappropriate for him to be pierced by Chun Hao's sword. Therefore, at this moment, he did not care where Chun Hao would attack. It was important for him to move first and take the initiative. But poof! What everyone did not expect, including Kong Ling Hong himself, was that when he moved, he directly bumped into Chun Hao's sword. What was even more unexpected was that Chun Hao's golden sword pierced through the unbelievably strong protective energy of the dragon scales, like cutting through tofu. That heart-piercing cold made Kong Ling Hong's hair stand on end. He felt the terror of impending death. A terrified, furious, and earth-shattering scream suddenly erupted from Kong Ling Hong's mouth. To be continued. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 188. At this critical moment, the dragon scales all over Kong Ling Hong's body began to compress from his limbs towards his heart. Cracking sounds came from within his body as his bones and meridians underwent a strange change. At the same time, a violent energy that could topple mountains and overturn seas surged out from his body in all directions with a loud boom. Streaks of sharp rainbow-colored light turned into streaks of terrifying sword light and blasted towards Chun Hao. Bang, bang, bang. Kaboom! Following the terrifying explosion, Chun Hao's ethereal figure was sent flying backwards under the shocked cries of countless people. While he was still in the air, arrows of blood had already shot out from his body. Kong Ling Hong was also sent flying backwards. Chun Hao's golden sword was still embedded in his left chest. Chun Hao, Tantai Lien, Yang Family, Yi Feng and I, Giant Pain, Dong Fong Ting, and Lung Yihan all stood up in horror and cried out. Xian Xian's face was also extremely shocked. She resisted the urge to cry out, but Fan Fong, who was beside her, smashed the hard stone table in front of him into powder with a bang. His eyes were dark and terrifying. With his high level of cultivation and amazing eyesight, he could naturally see that Chun Hao's body had been pierced by dozens of streaks of sword light. However, what surprised him was that the moment Chun Hao was pierced, his body seemed to twist strangely and not a single one of the streaks of sword light had managed to pierce through his vitals. But with so many injuries and so much blood spurting out, even if he did not die, he would lose the ability to fight. And Kong Ling Hong? Kong Ling Hong had used his powerful green dragon transformation to forcefully deflect the sword that had pierced through his heart. Although he was also severely injured, compared to Chun Hao, he was much better off. Moreover, Kong Ling Hong was now under the power of the green dragon inheritance and would definitely still have a terrifying fighting capacity. Such injuries would not affect him in the short term. What did this mean? It meant that Chun Hao would be faced with the enraged Kong Ling Hong and be blasted into pieces without being able to fight back. How could Chun Hao die at the hands of others? Unfortunately, no one could stop it, unless Chun Hao admitted defeat immediately. But at this moment, whether or not Chun Hao still had the ability to shout out the word admit defeat was a problem. Fan Fong's face was extremely twisted. This was definitely not what he wanted, definitely not. I want you dead. The threat of death caused Kong Ling Hong to completely lose his mind. His gloomy and angry voice suddenly sounded like a thunderclap that resounded throughout the entire training ground. As he spoke, his body gradually rose under the cover of the seven-colored light. At the same time, two ferocious and strange claws were changing in front of him. In an instant, a spiraling cyan rune rose up. The rune was octagonal, and the divine beast azure dragon was like a phantom soaring in the ninth heaven. At this moment, the energy of heaven and earth in the entire main arena suddenly surged violently and gathered towards the terrifying rune. His aura became more and more terrifying. The golden sword was still trembling in front of Kong Ling Hong's chest. He did not dare to take it, and he could not take it. At least, he could only do so after he killed Chen Hao. Such a strange and terrifying scene, in addition to the fact that he suddenly displayed an ultimate move that contained an aura of destruction, undoubtedly attracted everyone's attention. Everyone's eyes widened, filled with fear. Azure, dragon, seal. Seeing that the claws had turned into sword fingers, and he was shouting out the name of the secret technique, and with each word, the aura of the octagonal seal became several times more terrifying. Kong Ling Hong's sword fingers also gathered a bit of power behind him. As the words left his mouth, the sword fingers suddenly pointed towards Chen Hao. Die! Tantai Lien and the others screamed in horror. Everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and opened their mouths wide. Rumble. Roar. Accompanied by a terrifying explosion, the azure dragon and the octagonal seal suddenly let out a dragon's roar that resounded through the heavens and the earth. It actually flew out, as if it had condensed into a physical body and contained an extremely terrifying power. It rumbled and swept towards Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Everyone's gaze simultaneously looked towards Chen Hao at this moment. Tantai Lien, Dongfang Ting, and the others' faces had already turned pale. This time, no matter how much confidence they had in Chen Hao, it was already useless. They had already lost all hope. How could Chen Hao, who was lying motionless on the ground and covered in blood, be able to resist it? Without a doubt, Chen Hao, who was like a resplendent rising star, would fall like a meteor in this battle. However, at this moment, what shocked everyone was that raging flames suddenly rose from Chen Hao, who was lying on the ground. Caw! A strange bird's cry suddenly sounded. Then a rumbling explosion spread out. Raging flames instantly filled the entire arena, turning it into a sea of fire. Who said the Phoenix inheritance is useless? At this moment, Chen Hao's cold voice sounded from the sea of fire. No one saw his figure. They only saw that the sea of fire had transformed into a sea of blue flames that enveloped the roaring azure dragon. Terrifying explosions sounded continuously. After a full half a minute, there was finally no more sound. There was only the gradually weakening and dissipating flames, gradually revealing Chen Hao's figure. Other than that, there was nothing else. Yes, there was no Kong Ling Hong's figure. There was only floating ashes. Chen Hao's face was pale and his body trembled. Even his black eyes had become dim and lifeless. He was battered and exhausted. But even so, everyone's gaze towards Chen Hao was still incomparably shocked. The entire martial arts practice field was unusually quiet. After the shocked referee announced Chen Hao's victory, the instant the arena's boundary opened, Chen Hao strenuously waved his hand in the direction of Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, and the other three. He shouted in a low voice, Yang Fan. Tantai Lien used the fastest speed and the most covert method to wipe her eyes. With a whoosh, Yang Fan transformed into a streak of light and charged toward the arena. He directly used his energy to envelop Chen Hao and flew him back to the contestant seating area. Pills, Chen Hao said with difficulty. Tantai Lien immediately used her fastest speed to take out dozens of 8th grade spirit pills. She directly used her mental power to envelop them into a string and flew them into Chen Hao's mouth. After swallowing the pills, Chen Hao directly entered into a state of cultivation. Tantai Lien, Yang Fan, Li Yifeng, and Ni Giant Pain looked at each other before placing their palms on Chen Hao's back. At this moment, the four of them were surging with emotions. In the short span of 1 minute, their emotions had risen and fallen, then risen again. They had won, although it was a Pyrrhic victory. But in the end, they had survived and won. No one knew that this was not Chen Hao's original intention. Chun Hao was not so stupid as to merge with all things in the world and charge head-on. He had many ways to battle with Kong Ling Hong, but he chose to use such a risky method. Not only was he severely injured, but he also used the final move of the Phoenix inheritance, which directly made him a pauper. All the pills, including his own, and those obtained from killing Fan Yin and the other disciples, were all turned into nothingness. Impressive, impressive, so impressive. I can't believe I can be so powerful. Ha ha. Azure Dragon, crawl for me, or I'll whip you. Kikik. In Chun Hao's mind, the little bird placed its wings on its waist and puffed out its chest. Its human-like little eyes shone with a smug light as it stared at the weak behemoth in front of it and spoke with an arrogant smile. Impossible. Impossible. You two little birds are not my match even after joining forces. How is it possible? How can you defeat me and forcefully obtain the inheritance? How is it possible? The Azure Dragon's eyes shone with extreme shock, but it did not fear the Phoenix in front of it all. It did not even change the way it addressed the Phoenix. Ignoring the bickering between the two, Chun Hao, who was immersed in healing his injuries, became even more curious about the existence in his mind. That existence had sent a message through the Phoenix, and Chun Hao had completely followed the will of that existence by merging with all things in the world. The golden sword had to be stabbed into the opponent's body. The opponent had to use the ultimate move, the Azure Dragon Seal, and completely summon the Azure Dragon True Body. He had to be severely injured and spit out blood essence. Chun Hao did not understand why this was necessary. He originally did not intend to agree, but the tempting conditions passed to him by the Phoenix made him agree. Chun Hao originally did not know the purpose of this, but now he understood. Capture the Azure Dragon and forcefully obtain its inheritance. He also understood that that existence was omniscient about his abilities and even knew more about them than he did. But why do I have to almost die? Chun Hao still could not understand. Isn't this question simple? Treasure hunting sword's spirit suddenly said when this thought appeared in Chun Hao's mind. Why? Of course it's to increase your strength. That thing has power, but no strength. If you wanted to unleash its power, it has to rely on your strength. You will understand this when you step into the golden elixir realm. This time, it directly burned all of your elixirs to capture the Azure Dragon. Naturally, it could not waste the opportunity to refine your body with a nirvana flame. The rebirth of flames of desire is best when your body is severely injured, but you brat actually managed to avoid your vitals, which reduced the effect a little. Fortunately, it did not affect your vitals much. You will understand when your injuries recover. Good, good, good. Very good. At this moment, Fan Fong seemed to be Chun Hao's friend. When he saw that Chun Hao had turned the tables in such a way, he said excitedly. However, the malevolence and evil in his eyes sent chills down the spines of those around him. The nirvana of the Phoenix is so powerful. Isn't this an immortal body? Such heavy injuries, there are so many holes. Did you see, they're all gone now. It was only at this moment that the crowd began to discuss spiritedly. The elders on the rostrum were all frowning in confusion. The others could not see it, but how could they not see it with their cultivation? Chun Hao had clearly only summoned a phoenix, a single phoenix. However, the final attack had condensed the nirvana flame that could only be condensed when a phoenix was connected to its body. This was simply too strange. It was something that was impossible even in legends. Yet, it was happening right in front of their eyes. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 189. As the battle between Chun Hao and Kong Ling Hong came to an end, all the possible top 10 battles in the group competition were over. On the morning of the second day, the group competition was finally over, and the top 20 were decided. Gao Jianfei, who was ranked first on the Black Tower tablet, Ming Yi and Lung Yihan, who was ranked third, as well as the inheritor of the mythical beast inheritance, all advanced. Tantai Lien originally had no hope of advancing, but because Chun Hao had killed Kong Ling Hong, she was once again lucky to advance as the second in the group. Yang Fan was ranked 6th in the group. Considering his cultivation level, this result was already something to be proud of. In the quiet training room, Chun Hao sat cross-legged. Dense qi shrouded his body, rippling with vigorous and pure energy. Walala, Chun Hao, who appeared to be calm, actually emitted the sound of flowing water from within his body. The liquid energy was like a small river that surged endlessly within his meridians. Moreover, it seemed to be moving faster and faster. Chun Hao's mind sensed the changes within his body that had started on its own, and he understood what this represented, causing a trace of excitement to faintly suffuse his heart. After that, he calmed down, and his mind became clear as he allowed his ocean-like dantian to erupt with a surging torrent that gushed into his meridians, and it grew and multiplied endlessly as it continuously completed circulation after circulation. The energy flowing into his meridians became more and more vigorous and pure. Its speed became faster and faster. After circulating through his meridians, it was as if 10,000 streams were returning to the sea, and when it returned to his dantian again, its speed was even more astonishing. The sound of flowing water gradually turned into the terrifying sound of raging waves beating against the shore. It was also at this moment that the liquid energy core in Chun Hao's dantian suddenly set off an energy whirlpool, producing an extremely terrifying, devouring power. Streams of energy that were rapidly flowing through his meridians suddenly stopped circulating under this terrifying, devouring power and frantically rushed back into his dantian one after another. Boom! An explosion occurred in Chun Hao's mind and dantian at the same time. Even if the conditions were right, at this time, Chun Hao did not dare to have the slightest bit of negligence. All of his mind merged into the upper dantian of his mind and the lower dantian of his dantian, and his body also began to hum and vibrate at high speed. Sounds of explosions, accompanied by the pain of his upper and lower dantian and meridians collapsing. Chun Hao could clearly feel that the dual barriers of the fusion of martial arts and were gradually loosening under the continuous impact of the monstrous waves. Time passed second by second. Boom! After a full 2 hours, the fusion barrier, which was many times tougher than the barriers of ordinary cultivators, finally exploded with a boom. The surging energy in Chun Hao's body, which was on the verge of exploding, suddenly burst out. A dazzling 7-colored protective aura also appeared around Chun Hao's body with a boom. The surging energy suddenly seemed to flow into a wider channel. Although it didn't weaken at all, it turned into a slowly flowing river. The pain of Chun Hao's body exploding gradually disappeared, and he returned to calmness. Chun Hao let out a long breath, opening his eyes. 2 bright 7-colored rays of light flashed and disappeared. His handsome face had a trace of excitement, and the aura around his body was many times stronger. Chun Hao felt the vigorous energy in his body, and with a trace of surprise, his eyes focused. He lightly struck out with his palm, and suddenly a 7-colored, incomparably condensed palm shadow slowly flew out, crossing a distance of more than 10 feet, and lightly pressed against the wall that contained the powerful restriction. Pum! Kacha kacha! After a dull explosion, accompanied by cracking sounds, the wall of the training room actually began to crack like a spider web. The Saint level is so strong. Chun Hao looked at the creeping cracks on the wall, his expression full of surprise as he murmured. Chun Hao was very clear about how strong the walls of the training room were. These days he had not stopped attacking, but to leave a shallow mark was already the limit. And now he had only used 30% of his strength, and it had caused such a terrifying destructive power. It should be enough now, right? Chun Hao said in his mind. It should be enough now, right? In Chun Hao's mind, the little bird raised its head and repeated Chun Hao's question. A moment later, its human-like eyes flashed with a touch of joy. Chun Hao, it's barely enough. With the support of this phoenix and the Azure Dragon's energy, it should be enough. He said that you should try to restrain your aura as much as possible. Otherwise, if the opponent directly admits defeat, there will be no other way. I'll try my best, Chun Hao said. After that, he withdrew from his mind. How could it be so simple to gather the 5 divine beasts? The others were not fools. After seeing him kill them one by one, who would dare to come forward? What's more, he was not a homicidal maniac. Although they were all competitors, Chun Hao still felt a little uncomfortable using this method to improve himself. It did not matter if he killed Kong Ling Hong. He had asked for it. He had wanted to kill Chun Hao in the first place, and his arrogant manner was also courting death. But what about the others? If they were not as arrogant and despotic as Kong Ling Hong, no matter how cold and ruthless Chun Hao was, he would not have been able to do it. After all, these people had spent the blood and sweat of countless people to reach this point. They had also put in a lot of effort. Moreover, there was one more thing. The killing intent was too strong now. Perhaps even the elders on the platform would not be willing to see it. Although there were no restrictions in the rules of the competition, the disciples who had reached this point were all rare geniuses on the 100 Empire ranking. There were also disciples that these sects wanted to obtain. Chun Hao did not know that his state of mind had unknowingly changed a little after his sudden enlightenment. And it was this change that had brought him closer to the true Great Tao. The next day, the sky was clear and the sun was like fire. The 100 Empire ranking had also reached the time of the true peak showdown. Who would be the champion of the 100 Empire ranking? The crowd still did not have a definite answer in their hearts. However, the few contestants who had the strength to fight for the championship had already surfaced. Lung Yihan, who had comprehended the law of space and had astonishing battle prowess, was one of the strongest contenders. Although Lung Yihan had not obtained the inheritance of a divine beast and had not become a martial sage, no one dared to underestimate him. His voice was the strongest. Someone who had truly comprehended the law of space was definitely strong. Furthermore, Lung Yihan's shocking sword move was truly breathtaking. Among the hundreds of thousands of spectators, there were many low-grade martial sages who could clearly sense great danger from Lung Yihan. Next was Chun Hao, as well as the inheritors of the Vermilion Bird, White Tiger, and Qilin Divine Beast inheritances. Next was the Xuanwu inheritor, Liu Ran, who was an unknown factor. When Liu Ran met Gao Jianfei, he had chosen to admit defeat. However, he had not completed the first step of the Xuanwu fusion. The other inheritors of the Divine Beasts had already completed the fusion. Liu Ran should be able to complete it quickly as well. As long as he completed it before the battle of the top 20, he still had a high chance of winning. Aside from these people, even Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi were no longer in the list of contenders for the championship. Even though they were the first and second ranked experts on the Black Pagoda steel, it was useless. They were only at the peak of martial ancestor realm. Although their battle prowess was strong, how could they resist a martial sage who had obtained the inheritance of a divine beast? The round robin of the top 20 officially begins today. In order to avoid wasting time and unnecessary deaths, the arbitration team has decided to first select the participants. The list of the top 20 will be based on the group that qualified. Gao Jianfei, Liu Ran. After Lu Wuxiang announced the top 20 participants, he continued, "Now, for the participants whose names I call out, please confirm your opponent and who you want to admit defeat to." Gao Jianfei. Hearing the referee's words, Gao Jianfei immediately stood up with a serious expression. "When I call out your name, you answer whether you want to fight or not. Do you understand?" "Understood," Gao Jianfei replied in a low voice. The so-called selection was to delete the battles that required the participants to admit defeat. This would prevent them from wasting time and also allow them to arrange the battles accordingly. Of course, the participants who had decided to fight could still choose to admit defeat when it was time to go on stage. After all, as the battle progressed, the participants would naturally be able to understand their opponent's true strength more clearly. Then, it would be reasonable to make a new decision. It was not necessary to fight at this moment. However, those who said they would not fight were already admitting defeat and could not be changed. Soon, all the participants were selected. As expected, the participants who decided to fight were Lung Yihan, Chun Hao, Liu Ran of the Black Tortoise Inheritance, Ao Huawang of the Kirin Inheritance, Yu Qiyu of the White Tiger Inheritance, and Shu Liqin of the Vermilion Bird Inheritance. The first choice was Gao Jianfei. Although he felt embarrassed, he still gave up the battle with Lung Yihan. He dared to challenge Lung Yihan back then, but Lung Yihan was now a martial ancestor realm. He was not an idiot and naturally did not want to die. Other than Lung Yihan, he also gave up on the other 5. He also gave up on 6. Other than Chun Hao and the other 5, Tan Tai Lian also gave up on Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. The others made the same choice as Tan Tai Lian. The final result of the selection was the top 8. The top 6 were Lung Yihan and Chun Hao. The 6 did not fight, which was equivalent to 14 victories. The 7th and 8th were Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi. Of the top 6, the 2 of them had admitted defeat. The bottom 12 had all admitted defeat to them. Whichever of the 2 won would be 7th. In other words, the 2 of them only needed one battle to end all the matches on the 100 Empire ranking. After a while, the names of the battles were listed. The great battle officially began. The first battle, Gao Jianfei against Meng Yi. Please come to the arena. Whoosh! The 2 of them immediately flew to the arena as fast as lightning. Coward! Who was it that vowed to fight junior brother Lung Yihan on the 100 Empire ranking? Meng Yi said as he looked at Gao Jianfei with disdain after he entered the arena. Humph! A wise man submits to circumstances. Do you think I'm a brainless idiot like you? You want to use such words to provoke me? You're too stupid. Come, I'll show you the ranking on the pagoda stele. I, Gao Jianfei, am truly superior to you. This is the first update. Friends with monthly votes, please support Wushan. If you don't have monthly votes, please cast your daily recommendation votes. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this work, please come to Chidian. Come to cast your recommendation votes and monthly votes. Your support is my greatest motivation. Chapter 190. This should have been the battle that everyone looked forward to the most. Unfortunately, the rise of Lung Yihan, Chun Hao, and the inheritors of the divine beasts made Gao Jianfei and Meng Yi, the 2 super geniuses who originally occupied the top of the pagoda and were feared by countless disciples on the 100 Empire ranking, seem a little boring at this moment. After a short bickering, the 2 of them started a vigorous battle. Their powerful strength and combat power were indeed unmatched within the martial arts Grandmaster realm. Their ultimate skills were endless, causing the spectators with low cultivations to be shocked. However, compared to the battle between Chun Hao and Kong Ling Hong, it was still a level lower. The battle lasted for a full 10 minutes before it finally ended. The steady and solid Meng Yi defeated Gao Jianfei by a small margin and obtained 7th place, while Gao Jianfei was 8th. Immediately after, it was the battle between the weaker disciples like Tan Tai Lian. Tan Tai Lian displayed the power of the phoenix and easily defeated her opponent. After these people fought one after another, it was finally the battle between the 6 experts. The 8th battle, Liu Ran versus Ao Huawang. Please come to the arena. Following the loud voice of the referee, Liu Ran and Ao Huawang, who had obtained the inheritance of the Black Tortoise and the Qilin respectively, immediately flew onto the arena. The martial arts practice field, which had been silent for a long time, once again emitted a majestic vitality. Countless people raised their spirits and looked at the arena with bright eyes. Although Liu Ran was the last to successfully merge with the divine beast, he was only 2 or 3 days later than the others. Furthermore, his inheritance was the Black Tortoise, which had the strongest defense among the 5 divine beasts. Against the Qilin inheritor, Ao Huawang, who had the most powerful and terrifying power, no one could be sure who would win. Boom! Following the referee's command to start the battle, the 2 of them, who had cold expressions, did not waste any more words. Waves of abnormally powerful 7-colored origin power radiance immediately spread out like a tide. At the same time, the shadows of the divine beasts appeared above their heads. One of them was bone-chilling and instantly caused the temperature of the entire arena to drop below freezing point, stirring up gusts of strong wind. The other one was powerful like a mountain. It emanated an aura that was heavy and vast like a mountain, and it was filled with strength. It forced the numerous strong gales to retreat 300 m away, and it was even to the extent that the icy cold aura was unable to approach it in the slightest. Before they even made a move, the powerful and terrifying aura and pressure from the two gods caused countless people to be shocked. Up until now, although Liu Ro and Ao Huawang had displayed the power of the divine beast's inheritance, they had not used the power of the inheritance in their battles after they had advanced to martial sage. At this moment, facing a powerful opponent, the two of them no longer held back. Hiss! When the two people's auras were raised to the peak, two illusions of divine beasts appeared above their heads and immediately merged into their bodies. Liu Ro of the Black Tortoise inheritance seemed to have put on a tortoise shell armor. The tortoise shell shone with an icy blue crystal light and aura. Just by looking at its appearance, one could tell how strong its defense was. But that appearance, however, he did not dare to flatter him. If that was not a living tortoise, what was it? On the other hand, Ao Huaguang, who was originally like an iron tower and looked like a ferocious beast, became even more ferocious and terrifying after the Qilin's illusion merged with his body. His entire body was covered with sparkling yellow scales, and his strength was extremely powerful. Come on, let's see if your tortoise shell is harder or if my strength is stronger. As Ao Huaguang spoke, he took a step forward. Instantly, the mountain shook and the earth shook. His huge body was like a small mountain that rumbled as he charged toward Liu Ro. A trace of coldness flashed in Liu Ro's eyes. Although the Black Tortoise inheritance was good, it was indeed an existence that could not be discussed. Faced with words like tortoise shell and asterisk, 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 he really did not have any temper. Therefore, he did not say anything. With a whoosh, he directly struck out a palm at Ao Huaguang as fast as lightning. Oomph! Ao Huaguang's huge palm bent and stretched out, and an incomparably vigorous yuan qi condensed in his palm. It violently smashed Liu Ro's attack and advanced at high speed. The Qilin's strongest point was undoubtedly its strength, but its defense was equally strong. It actually relied on a pair of fleshy palms that were covered with scales to collide with Liu Ro's sharp and cold energy and rapidly approached. A terrifying explosion, accompanied by circles of strong wind, swept out. In an instant, the two of them were in close combat. The power of Ao Huaguang's huge fist rapidly expanded, forcing Liu Ro to continuously retreat. However, Liu Ro's expression did not have the slightest bit of fear. This level of strength, under the protection of the tortoise shell, caused little damage to the body. So what if he was strong? It was really not possible to do anything to him. But unfortunately, Liu Ro also could not do anything to the terrifying strength of Ao Huaguang. Looking at the terrifying battle between the two of them, everyone was still trembling with fear at the beginning, but after a few minutes, they became numb. One of them had a terrifying attack, and the other had a strong defense. Unexpectedly, neither of them had a change in expression, and they could not hurt the other in the slightest. It made everyone feel that it was neither painful nor itchy. Finally, when the neither painful nor itchy battle lasted for a full 15 minutes, the fiery Ao Huaguang could not bear it anymore. If this continued, the one who would lose would definitely be him. Liu Ro, who was like a coward, did not even attack at this moment. It was obvious that he wanted to exhaust him to death. Therefore, Ao Huaguang did not continue. With a loud shout, his huge body suddenly rose up. With a rumble, his originally mountain-like body suddenly grew several times larger at this moment. Roar! A resounding bestial roar that was filled with endless pressure suddenly erupted. Ao Huaguang finally used the strongest move of the Qilin inheritance, Qilin's seal. Immediately, a force that was like a mountain and an ocean filled the entire arena. The violent energy of heaven and earth crazily surged. A mountain that was hundreds of feet tall and hundreds of feet wide, shining with a dazzling earthy yellow light, quickly condensed above Ao Huaguang's hands. At this moment, Ao Huaguang was like a ferocious Hercules with a ferocious gaze and a ferocious face. The moment the mountain condensed, it fiercely smashed down on Liu Ro's head. Die! Accompanied by Ao Huaguang's loud shout, the huge mountain crashed down with a loud bang. In your dreams, Liu Ro, who was already prepared, activated the black tortoise seal at the same time when Ao Huaguang used his ultimate move. After a loud shout, his arms, legs, and head suddenly shrank into the tortoise shell, and at this moment, the tortoise shell expanded at a terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, it was like an incomparably huge pot lid that was upside down on the arena. On it, a dazzling crystal light shone and was covered with black tortoise patterns. At this moment, everyone in the martial arts practice field widened their eyes and stared at the terrifying scene of the mountain smashing down on the pot lid. Without a doubt, after this attack, the victor would be decided. If the tortoise shell was smashed, then Ao Huaguang, who had exhausted all his energy, would win. If the tortoise shell was firm, then it might be a draw, because with such a terrifying ultimate move, even the defensive Liu Ro would definitely have exhausted all his energy. Bang! Rumble! The moment the mountain smashed down on the pot lid, the mountain shook and the earth shook. The entire martial arts practice field, which was dozens of miles in radius, trembled violently. Some of the spectators who didn't have much cultivation were directly shaken half a meter from their seats and let out countless terrified screams. On the main arena, dust and smoke billowed. The huge mountain stood tall and upright, and the tortoise shell's shadow couldn't be seen. Smashed to death. At this moment, countless people thought in horror. This scene was obviously the tortoise shell being smashed flat, and Liu Ro, who was hiding inside, must have been crushed into a meat paste. However, a few seconds later, when a mountain formed by energy began to dissipate, what surprised everyone was that a large piece of the hard arena floor actually appeared. At the same time, it also gradually dissipated, revealing a huge, deep pit. In the pit, Liu Ro stood up with blood at the corner of his mouth, battered and exhausted. And Ao Huaguang, who was standing in the air, fell to the ground with a bang. His face was also pale, and he stood up shakily. The final result was a draw. No one had the strength to attack again. Godly tortoise? Mother, isn't this Liu Ro in an invincible position? If he tightens his tortoise shell, no one can hurt him. Too awesome. Fortunately, his attack wasn't strong. Otherwise, Ao Huaguang would definitely lose. Countless people in the crowd were discussing. The defense of a cowardly tortoise was really too strong, too shocking. One had to know that the floor of the arena contained extremely strong restrictions, and the material was precious ore, but it was smashed into a huge pit that was several meters deep and tens of feet wide. And Liu Ro had only exhausted his strength and suffered some injuries. Chun Hao frowned slightly, staring at the huge pit, a faint light flashing in his eyes. Obviously, even Chun Hao wasn't sure if he could break Liu Ro's defense at this moment. Taking a deep breath, Chun Hao turned to look at Long Yihan. He saw Long Yihan also staring at the deep pit, but immediately after, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he lazily leaned back in his seat. It seems that his realm has increased again. Seeing this scene, Chun Hao couldn't help but think to himself. The last time he saw Long Yihan, Chun Hao already knew that he was far inferior to Long Yihan. At this moment, after half a year of training, Chun Hao was sure that he could catch up to Long Yihan. But now, Long Yihan's expression told Chun Hao that he had enough confidence to break Liu Ro's defense. Thinking of Long Yihan's stunning sword, Chun Hao frowned slightly and thought to himself, what if these guys are killed by Long Yihan in advance? If that's really the case, my chances will be even lower. Chun Hao hesitated slightly, but finally decided to greet him. Brother Long. Chun Hao condensed his voice into a line and transmitted it to Lung Yihan, who was not far away. Lung Yihan was slightly taken aback and looked in Chun Hao's direction. Can I ask you for a small favor? Help? Of course, if you win against me, it'll be your request. If you lose, it'll be 2 of my requests. Anything is fine. Just say it. Lung Yihan's lips curled up slightly. He seemed to be very straightforward, but his words were very stingy. The reason for this was that Lung Yihan wasn't sure if he could defeat Chun Hao, who had completely exceeded his expectations. Second update. Requesting recommendation tickets, monthly tickets. Thank you. To be continued. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.